Or
That would be Ted.
Yeah,
okay,
Ted's the main man.
you were so easy to volunteer that. Thank you.
Somebody's got to.
So, where would we like to start from where we left off? Do we want to pick it up with recycling? Does that seem to have been an area that there was some discussion?
That's true. Where is that? It's right here. Well, okay.
In the week or so since, Jesse provided us some numbers, specifically covering the amount of tonnage from 2015 to 2020. And indeed, in a period of time there wasn't a substantial increase. However, in the last few years, it seems to have leveled out. At the same time, he provided some information on the hours a week worked. And believe it or not, over the same period of time, if you ignore 2016 and before, generally the number of hours worked has been falling consistently through that time period. Given that information, I have a question for Jesse. Jesse, full-time people, they work how many hours a week?
40
40. And how many do you have?
currently.
What's that?
Currently,
How many do you have on the books?
4.
4. And has that been consistent through this time period?
No.
So prior you might have had 3.
Yeah.
The hard part for me to figure out here is that the number of hours a week full-time ranges from 134 to a high of 164, which I was having a hard time reconciling how that mapped out to full-time employees. At 40 hours a week, I would imagine 4 people would be 160 hours a week. And since the numbers vary, I wasn't sure how the math worked.
From 2015 to 2016?
From 2015 through present.
So, so typically we should have 4 full-timers and a part-timer. And the reason why you're seeing varying hours is it was in the last 3 years is due to hiring, terminations, resignations, due to illnesses, needing to move on with a career, and like myself, being deployed last year for 3 months for COVID. So that's the reason why you see differences. And that's if we're fully staffed. Last year we weren't fully staffed for quite some time.
Okay. Nonetheless, I did some projections using a spreadsheet, assuming those hours, and based on that, we're looking at this year, you being down about 1,800 hours work, which is almost a full-time position from 2017. As such, if you're down a full-time position, it's really hard for us to imagine that you need to fill 2 full-time positions to carry the load.
Why? Hold on. Stop. Currently, right now, I have 4 full-timers and a part-timer. right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm taking my part-timer into a full-time position. I'm not filling two full-time positions. I'm just creating a full-time position and taking away a part-time position.
Right.
Correct. But your full-time hours budgeted that you gave us for data shows 134 hours a week, which is
And
26
did you look at my
down
notes?
from full-time.
Did you look at my notes?
Yep.
Okay. And that's the reason why there's so many hours less.
So you have a full-time position that is currently not filled.
No, I do. I have 4 full-timers and a part-timer.
He's got a part-time position that's
Alright.
not filled right now. He's asking to add 20 more hours a week and making that part-time position a full-time position with no part-time position any longer.
Right. And additionally with benefits and all that sort of stuff that goes
Correct.
with a
Yes.
full-time position.
And that equates to about $49,826
For the benefits?
with benefits, the position and
Oh,
benefits.
okay. Okay.
So Jesse, for your 134 hours a week, you already subtracted out what was not filled for the last year?
Yes. But that's legitimately, I should have had 160 hours a week for 4 full-timers. I was only able, they only literally worked 134 hours per week.
So they only worked 134 hours a week for the entire year or part of the year?
It's mixed. That's an average. Because of my foreman leaving due to illness, I had to leave for COVID. So yeah, those hours flux. So I just averaged it up.
So you're saying on average, if you took the entire year, it came out to about 134 hours full-time per week.
Yes.
And so on average, throughout the entire year, you're saying you had 21 hours a week for part-time.
No, that's how many hours that was actually worked.
So how
There,
if you took your part-time person and you moved them up to full-time, the part-time should have theoretically dropped at that point in time to 0.
yeah, you're right. It'll drop to 0.
And so during the interceding time between when you put your part-timer to full-time, did you hire another part-time person?
Yes.
And they were working over 20 hours a week.
It's an average.
Okay. Would it be interesting to show that also during 2019 to 2020, you actually did not process more waste as a whole? The average is actually decreased by decreased by 0.45%.
You're talking about waste?
Your aggregate of your waste plus recycle.
Okay. What about it? So we didn't process more?
19 to 2020. I'm trying to figure out here, when did it become critically important to have another full-time?
I've been wanting another full-timer for a while.
Since?
Probably 2017, 2018.
And how did you put in a request at that time?
No, I did not.
So why this year instead of 2017?
Because I was recommended that I do not.
And who recommended that you not?
The town administrator.
Was there a reason given?
What was, I'm sorry, what was the, what was the recommendation?
That I do not try to recommend for a full-time position during that period of time for 2018.
Okay, I wasn't TA then.
No,
was-
you aren't. You aren't.
Yeah,
Because 2017, it looks like 2016 to 2017, 2016 to 2017, based on the data, would have been the time I would have expected a request of this nature. My concern right now is the trend seems to be flat, and it seems like an odd time to be asking for another position given the current fiscal situation.
Oh, it actually, if you look at it, so it's just been increasing.
I'd be happy to share my screen if somebody enables me to screen share.
I don't know if Andrew caught that. Or...
I don't know how to do that.
green thing down in the middle, down at the bottom, it says share screen. Is that us or is that you?
But
That's
Somebody, the host has to enable.
Okay, forget it.
Right.
We have to,
Oh,
oh,
did I lose them all?
is Andrew here?
it's supposed to say stop share.
Can you help us share that screen?
Wants the screen share.
There you go.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
This is the data that Jesse provided. Here, 2016 to 2020. And here is the year-over-year percentage increases, including the total tonnage processed. As you can see, 2019 to 2020, we actually saw a slight decrease in the number of tons. Down here, I used 2015 as the base year. So at the end of this year, we will be, well, at the end of 2020, we're almost a quarter more tonnage over the total time period. But you can see the growth really happened in the 2017 to 2019 time frame. So here I have a simple chart that shows the waste and what accounts for most of the increase in total tonnage appears to be recycling based on Jesse's data. Given I wasn't sure how the numbers were calculated, I calculated it two ways. With the notes here, I assumed that I was subtracting for the blue line, and if I just did a straight multiplication for the orange line. So the number of hours worked is the orange line based on what Jesse has just said. And that shows an increase in the 2016 to 2016-17, and then a steady decrease in the number of actual hours worked. My feeling is if we were at full staff, full time, we should be looking at a total number of hours worked consistent with the 2016 line 4 time frame, which my feeling is full staff first before we consider adding a position. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
And that's just using the data that Jesse provided.
So I'd also like to say that, yes, I'm sorry. 2020, we did see a decrease in waste, right? As you showed, Ted. It also mentioned that some of that solid waste was deferred to other waste facilities, because we weren't taking it.
Well, that's not something I can't account for in the data that.
Well, no, but you also didn't mention it either. So I'm mentioning it that those numbers, yeah. So there's what 21-ton difference. Yeah, we would have definitely beat that easily.
And so when you say defer to other facilities, I don't really know what that means.
The waste went to other facilities.
So the people didn't drive to Plymouth dump, they drove somewhere else.
Yes, because we weren't taking it.
Okay.
So was Jesse, was that because you didn't have the manpower to do it, or was that because of the type of?
It's actually a mix.
Wanted to wait until a pause. Sure.
I have a question. Do we still have people coming into our facility from other towns?
As far as I know, we try to do the best we can. I'm sure they are. I get phone calls from other towns saying that, hey, this person's going to come to your town. This is the vehicle. They try to. We try to mitigate it as best as we can. It's just we can't stop everybody.
So Jesse, there were some towns that are now regionalizing. And does that make any sense at all? Would our revenue go up at all if we became like a regional facility? And that would justify a full-time position, obviously. If we are any towns at the point getting out of the business that might want to farm it out to us?
Really don't think so.
I think it was a Littleton. I don't know. There was like several towns around us that were becoming regional.
Nothing from what I've heard.
Okay.
So I have a question. If regardless of the money, I think Jesse's in that department's in the same situation that the highway's in. If you got part-time help, they've struggled for the last year to keep help because it's part-time help. And the highway seems to work hand in hand with them. And I can tell you that I noticed that they struggle. They really should have a full-time guy because especially if Jesse's not there, they need more full-time people to take on and make the place run. And with part-time help, they don't have that responsibility. So if you give the full-time help an initiative and you work with them, you're going to get a lot more production and more out of those people. That's just how I see it.
And that's all it is. If I can get more people to work, I can try to make more revenues for the town. Like due to COVID, stop it. Due to COVID, we had to throw away a lot of recycling. And that's revenue that we just threw away. And on top of that, it was when I had to be deployed. It was legitimately, there was only 2 people there at the recycling center, and work wasn't getting done. We just caught up with work from last year. So, if a town doesn't see productivity by just making the part-timer a full-timer, I don't know what to say. Now, I'm trying to advocate for the recycling center. And that's what it is. Now, there's very few people that know how our operations are ran. And our operation is manned by having people there. So, there could be an increase in revenue.
I can see where Jesse has problems because he doesn't have enough help. I can see it.
I think that this is a really strange year, though. I mean, Jesse had, he himself got deployed. We had some pretty significant illness. We ended up with some turnover in the recycling center. If we're looking back on 2020 and saying the recycling center really struggled in terms of their staffing, well, yeah, they absolutely did. But I don't know if that was because of a budgetary issue. I think they probably, everything bad that could happen happened to their staffing this year. And so I don't know as we can necessarily look at 2020 and say the recycling center's understaffed and that's why they've struggled. I think they've just had a real bad situation.
So I think Ted actually kind of showed that the staffing was more than adequate or whatever, so versus the amount of tonnage. So, I think 2020 though was such an odd year. Yeah, you couldn't really base it on that necessarily. But yeah, there were a lot of events last year in recycling, with the loss of life. And so, but I also get where Ted's coming from. You could prove the need for something more clearly. That, I mean, Ted was fastidious enough to like make a graph to show tonnage versus hours versus adequate staffing, and so I think there's nothing wrong with striving to justify an added position based on data that can be provided. So I guess you got a couple of things that are, I mean, the fact that 2020 was so whacked, and you probably would need the full, or it's desirable to obtain the full-time position in order to maintain full staff that don't blow off a part-time position, and they're constantly trying to fill that position. What's the difference in what's the difference in the funding for that particular position if you lost the part-time and the full-time with benefits?
About half. You're looking at about 25,000 for a part-timer.
25,000.
About
Okay.
half.
So, but it'd be like 20 grand, right? That you'd add?
Yep.
I mean,
You'd have to take out the 49,826 and, as Bill's saying, add back in 20,000 to allow him to have, or allow the department to have a part-time individual.
It's a $29,000 savings to not convert that position to full-time.
Correct.
But the part-time position is already staffed.
okay. But that position though, that person is going to walk into a full-time position if it gets funded.
If it gets
Right.
funded.
All right. So you're not going to advertise and then say sayonara to this guy that's been working in the part-time position.
But in the budget, Jesse, we actually took out the part-time position's pay.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to get to, is a number here that needs to either be adjusted in the budget if they just allow you the part-time to continue, or leave the budget like it is to budget for the full-time person. You have other recommendations too. Will you vote on this at the end, or as we go through the budget, will you vote on these, or are you going to vote on these separately?
I don't know. Is there any other feedback from the rest of the board or any comments?
Ann, what you were saying, that 49,000 is actually a net of 29, or because you took away a part-time?
Right, we already took away that, yeah. I would say 29, Bill is saying 20, so.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's what I want to make sure, that it wasn't 49 on top of what we had. It's a net of a part-time and full-time, the net difference.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right.
All right. Mike, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I just look at the process, and I think our process, we really need to rethink it and look at it, because I know that we're always looking for more information, and I think there would be a way that we could be a little more consistent throughout the departments to give us a better handle on the information and a better handle on the knowledge of what goes into, Jesse's work and Joe's work and Steve and Tom's and Diane's. I just think that we don't have enough base knowledge with what we're looking at. And I think that that's something that I would hope the board would look into that, and perhaps maybe develop a committee that can go in and put all that information together. Because I think that we're spending a lot of time trying to pull information out because of what we don't understand. And it's taken a lot more time. I think we've got to get some kind of a regimen and some kind of a system set up that makes it a little bit easier to be able to see for ourselves. I mean, we're depending on each department person to explain to us, when we go into these budget sessions, when we're questioning them, it's like, well, what exactly do you need this for? I just think there's not enough knowledge base, and I just think it would probably streamline and make it easier for everybody if we were to take a look at that. And I know that's a bigger picture thing, but I think we ought to consider that going forward.
I just want to be clear. I'm not really saying that I don't value what the recycling facility does. But as a whole, I think through a process like Mike talks about, where we can have some numbers that can be shown to us that demonstrate need, that we can consistently collect year to year, so that we can see when something is changing to better support the position of the departments that are asking for stuff.
I get it. And Anne's volunteered to do that. You're shaking her head, yes. Okay, we're all set.
Well, that's pretty big for one person, I think. That's
Yeah.
an awful lot of
Something
work.
that's going to get done at this meeting for sure.
Right.
But in the future meetings, now that we know the budget committee wants to see additional information that they've never asked for before,
Mhm.
we'll
Yeah.
make sure that information is available.
Yeah.
Or at least provide in services too. Just to make sure that that the department heads can actually help you out in that process.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, so are we going to do this position or consider, or just like wait until the end?
I would wait until the end, and once you get into the budgets later on tonight, I think we'll be able to look at all these recommendations together, including those of the town manager, and potentially
Okay,
look at them all at once.
okey-doke.
Police department was next.
I want to make one note on cemetery. We noticed there that they actually are modernizing something, which is reducing costs, which we wholeheartedly applaud.
Okay,
The green space.
Police. As noted last year, the biggest issue here is, in my opinion, parking budget and how it is used to pay for things that are not parking. Now, while as a whole, it doesn't change the bottom line a heck of a lot, I think for greater clarity and greater transparency, that the costs that are attributed to parking that are not truly parking costs should either be shown as either moved to another budget. In other words, I'm talking about Steve's administrative support, or if it's still going to be paid out of that budget, then it be shown as a revenue into that budget. Because as a whole, parking really shouldn't be more than twice its revenue, especially when there are functions like crossing guard duties and administrative services that don't directly impact parking paid out of parking. Does that resonate with anyone?
Yeah, I think the same thing, Ted. I was asking Chief Lefebvre about the administrative assistant in one of the prior meetings as well, because that's one that really kind of sticks out in there. Apparently, that was intentionally put in there for some reason in the past, but my impression was that he felt the same way, that it feels goofy in there, and you know, Chief is on, he can speak for himself, but I support the idea of moving that to a budget line item that makes more sense.
It honestly doesn't make a difference to me where it goes. It's just, I just don't want it the way it was a while ago, where like half of her salary was in one budget and the other half was in the other, or, you know, we try to work out the percentage of how much time she works on one or the other. And that's just let's stick it in one budget. I don't care where it goes, as long as it's in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree, Steve. That streamlines it, and I think it makes it simpler, and I think less is more in some respects. So I agree with you on that one for sure.
and this is another area where it's really easy to derive performance metrics. How well is your parking working? If you don't have all the extraneous things that are not parking in it, you can really do a better apples to apples comparison to another municipality or another area if you only have parking related things paying for parking.
I mean, I could see a situation where suddenly parking was producing so much revenue that it made sense to say, well, you know, the administrative assistant does some of her time on parking. Let's put that cost over there, and you know, our parking is paying for it. But when you look at the budget, it looks like we're losing a ton of money on parking, and that's when I look at it and say, like, well, gosh, you look at this budget. I don't know why we even charge anybody for parking. All we do is lose money. But I know that's not actually the reality in terms of the way things are working.
Yeah, and when we're talking parking, I just want to have everybody be fully aware that it's not just about the revenue. Don't forget, because you'll have people park there all day long, and then you'll have all the business owners go bankrupt.
Business owners will kill you.
Correct. Yeah, it's more than just the revenue.
Yes.
The enforcement piece of it is very, very important for this town.
Agreed.
Oh, you mean you don't make enough when you feed the meter?
Right.
Well, it gets a whole lot closer if we start to remove things that have nothing to do with parking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's what we're talking about here is bringing the parking into parity. If it's a little more expensive, people can understand that because they understand the value of it. But if it's more than twice as expensive as the money that we're pulling in, then people start to ask the questions and say, why are we even doing this? It's a money pit.
And again, really doesn't matter to me. It makes sense what you're all saying. I totally get it. And if that's where you want to move it back, that's fine. But understand this. One of you is going to have to defend me at town meeting, because somebody's going to ask how come the original police budget went up so much. It's because we moved somebody's whole salary over to a different budget.
You didn't realize you were the setup guy for that, Steve?
Right. I mean, I'm okay with answering it as long as everybody can just back me and say, yes, we decided as a group to do this. I'm okay. I'm okay with wherever it goes.
Yep.
And I would be willing to stand up, Steve, and say, yes, we moved it to where it made more sense.
Perfect.
I'd be willing to say, yes, Steve came up with the idea all by himself, and we're going to back him.
I don't need that. I don't need that.
All right. I'll start getting tickets out of the blue, I guess, if I keep that approach. Anyway.
Let's see. Highway, one of the things that we kind of flagged is that, we know that they were getting a whole bunch of new equipment, but the maintenance budgets didn't change. Perhaps this is an oversight. We did also notice that, as for what the highway department does, they don't seem to have, in our observation, necessarily the right amount of budget to support what their job is. So we recommended that maybe a thorough analysis of departments and spending occur so that we can make sure that all of these entities are right sized. Make sure that the highway department, based on number of roads maintained, number of miles of road maintained, is consistent with what we would expect. And that gets back to having some standardized metrics that we can look at. It's like, well, you know, it costs about this much per mile of road, and the Plymouth Highway Department's budget is X. Does that meet that standard?
I'm not really sure how you want me to answer that because what it costs to do these projects, you guys can't even fund me for what's on the plate versus putting together a line item that tells you that we're 20 years behind in being up to standards.
Well, I think Joe, I totally understand and agree. Having talked to you for the last couple of years to see what kind of shape the department is in based upon what's not been done, and I think that if we take a look at where we're at and then realistically look at you'll realistically look at what is top priority, and the town may have to make a little more emphasis towards a little more funding on the road side of things.
Well, I have a list.
Yeah,
I have a list, and I have priorities.
Yeah, I know. We did that last year, but I mean, I think the board can look at that and say, okay, we've got to make a move here and do something, because I do think that your department probably is lagging behind everybody else in terms of support, and on top of that, the work that needs to be done to catch up.
All you got to do is drive the roads to see it.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that, Joe.
Yeah. Bring a spare tire.
I think you do a hell of a job. So.
When you start to lose a road, it becomes incredibly expensive to bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm faced with one right now, Bartlett Road, because you're asking me to cut my budget. That I had to choose between New Hebron and Bartlett Road, and so New Hebron is loaded with houses. Bartlett Road has no houses. So my recommendation is shutting Bartlett Road down until we can fund to fix it down to the mill. I have to keep it open from the Etten Road to the mill for fire purposes. But other than that, that's my recommendation because I just don't have money anymore. And people are calling me and telling me the roads are unsafe. And so I don't know how else to tell you, except for, I give you the letters and I tell you, other than getting the funding, that's my recommendation.
Well, the other thing too, I think we create liability as a town, because if police and fire have to get to a place and that becomes part of the issue, then we're looking at some liability there, I think. So.
And we need a whole lot more money.
We do. Everybody should be buying tickets for the.
There you go, to ride the road. We'll put tolls on every road.
Well, some of our town roads are used as shortcuts.
Yeah, they are.
And that puts a lot of wear and tear on them.
You mean like Bell Road?
Yeah, Bell Road is scary, even though it's been rebuilt.
Bartlett's kind of scary too. And I use that for a shortcut all the time. You just have to know which side of the road to go on.
Oh, you're the guy.
Yeah, I'm the guy that ruined the road. Oh, the guy's like facing you as I'm coming down Bartlett.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
So one of my setbacks is because the bond, and we're in a position where I set up a schedule with a pile of roads, and then South Main Street came along. That set me back as far as my expectations for the townspeople and what you guys expect out of me. But my decision to use that money to fund South Main Street, which looks like it's possibly going to fall into place, is because the grant match is so astronomically, I can't pass that opportunity up. So what it does is it just sets me back but in the long run, South Main Street will be in a position where we'll benefit from it in the long run.
Yep. Are we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. The biggest observation we had under fire and ambulance is they put in a 5% increase based on expected salary analysis. And the only thing that we really find there specifically is that putting in a 5% increase before you know the result of the analysis seems to be a little bit ahead of the, putting the cart before the horse kind of a situation. We should wait till we know what the result of that analysis is and then address the salary increase once we know that information. I don't know when that's anticipated. Is that anticipated like forthcomingly, like in the next month, or is it 6 months from now? Maybe Tom, you could talk about that.
So we had looked at, as it turns out, several of the communities that are actually in the study to come up with that number, and particularly for the deputy chief and myself to know that we are paid, well below the average for communities that we would compare to. And in fact, that's what the preliminary results are showing in that study. When I looked at it today, we are right around 10% below the average of what MRI has suggested for 2022. And they provided a range. So we're 10 to 12% below their average. That's not okay. And in terms of the administrative assistant, one of the things we have to look at, because we're competing with not only other communities when we fill that position, are organizations like the university, the co-op, the hospital, who all pay much more for that same position. So it's fine to look at other fire departments for that position, but we also have to look at other organizations who we're competing with, if you will, to fill that.
We also noted that from years past that you had a difficult time collecting some of the fees from other entities. That they could be from calls to other towns because of the cooperative relationship you have. And is there a way we can charge those other towns and let them be responsible for chasing down the funds? Or does that always have to solely become the burden of the fire department?
No, in fact, since I've taken over, that's changed, Ted, and I apologize. I thought we went over this before when we met, but now all of the expenses that we incur, including ambulance billing, and we have a third-party billing company that does all of our billing, and we have a collections company when it gets to that point. All of those type of expenses are now rolled into the contract prices that go out for the other communities. So we're actually looking at real expenses versus real income. And that's how those other communities are charged. So that the balance doesn't rest on the taxpayers of Plymouth, which it has been at times. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
So it's improved dramatically over years past. And we shouldn't be in a position of basically holding on to that debt for those other areas, for those other towns.
Right. We're definitely making progress.
And this is for Ann and Kathy. If we could have something in the budget materials provided to the committee that shows the revenues that the Plymouth Fire Department gets and pulls back in to offset expenses, as a part of our standard packet. I think that would go a long way in making it
Yeah.
easier for the budget committee to analyze the department.
Got it.
I think we're down to just the town clerk's office. This budget was fairly straightforward. I know that there was an issue presented by a substantial raise. The budget committee doesn't feel that it's within our purview to approve or not approve specifically salary increases like that. It seems to be more a Board of Selectmen and town manager responsibility. So increases in this budget should wait until the board and the town manager approves that particular salary. I assume everybody on the board has the report that we wrote up, so they can look at this detail.
Yeah, so is it okay if I speak, Ted?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what I did was I requested $60,000. I looked at the original request that I had made last year in the budget, 57 for 7,000, and I adjusted that by 3%. So that came out to roughly 60,000. And I did that because I have plans to increase services more by hopefully opening up 2 Saturdays a month. Most likely not right now because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but once things start to, normalize again, I would like to do that. I think that's needed in this community. I think just looking at the services that are provided, I understand my position's elected. I do understand that. I understand. But it's also a managerial position. And compared to the other managerial positions in this town, I think that this one is underpaid. But what I have offered is only a proposal. This is just a conversation that I'd like to have with the budget committee, Kathy, of course, and the Board of Selectmen. Kathy and I actually recently spoke, and we decided that instead of asking for 60,000 right now, I'm going to take a 3% raise, which is the overall raise that everyone typically gets, and that we're going to wait for the wage study, which I believe, Kathy, I may be wrong, but I think that's close to being finished.
Close.
It's still being looked at by the board, Josie, and will be discussed. We have a meeting with them actually at 4:00.
Okay. So based on what that survey will state, I think that'll have an influence over that decision too. Yeah.
Okay.
Really didn't have anything else other than just that last one. I will say that from a budget committee perspective, I was very supportive of that salary study that you hired an outside person to basically look at your positions, start classifying them into something that you could more easily extrapolate to other areas, and basically get that stuff based on some real data. So I think that will make it easier in the future, again, to make arguments about salary, equity, and whether you need new positions or not too.
Yeah. My only concern with, and I talked to Ann about this briefly, and this is something, if I'm allowed to be part of the Q&A tonight at 4:00, I think I have plans to ask Carol from MRI this question. It looked like she was comparing my position to, the treasurers and the tax collectors who have very different hours than, my office, which is full-time. And so that was just one concern that I had regarding the survey that's, MRI is conducting. But aside from that, I think it's really good that we have this study.
So Josie, that is a question that you can ask Carol about when she's on at 4. She'll go through her study, how she got to those numbers, and then you can ask her that question. That it?
That's it, right?
That was the end of our list.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Budget Committee.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Just a reminder that we have a public hearing, Ted, next Monday at 6:15,
And Mike and Mike.
and Mike and Mike,
Mhm.
and that
Okay.
is a Zoom meeting of the board.
First public hearing on the budget.
So 6:15 Monday.
and
25th.
fifth.
Let me throw it on my calendar so I don't forget.
Okay. All right.
While you have the nonprofit committee here, can you potentially go on to that? Cheryl is logging in at 4:00.
Yeah. All right. Didn't we already go over this or what?
They
You
gave
didn't
us their
vote.
recommendations, but the board did not vote to accept what they recommended.
Okay.
So that's what we need. So we
Oh, where the
can
heck is it? There we go.
put it in the budget.
Okey-doke. So we're on to the nonprofits. And the board's already seen this.
They were there for all the recommendations from the
Yep.
nonprofit committee.
I know we already got a thank you from Lakes Region Mental Health. That's kind of nice. I don't know if you got that or not, but for the proposed increase. So are you looking for a motion?
Yes. Just to accept it.
Is there a motion to accept?
So move.
All right, John moves. Is there a second? Did somebody second?
I didn't see anybody.
Second,
All right, Neil seconds. Any discussion?
What exactly are we accepting?
The budget items for the nonprofit agencies that we discussed last time.
Okay. Yes.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Mary Ann, your vote?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Neil?
aye.
Bill? Aye.
Thank you to Mike and Mark.
Yeah.
Very good job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the way this was presented in the spreadsheet was very clear. I thought it was really easy to understand what was
Well,
recommended. It was,
yeah.
it was really helpful.
yeah.
Sure.
Well, Mark Howland's a pretty good catch. He
Right.
brings a lot to the table.
You're not too shabby, Mike.
Well, I try.
We appreciate it. Everything you do.
Well, thank
Greatly
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. And it's kind of early.
She's on though.
Yeah, I know, I see. Now, where is that study too? I thought I brought it, but I can't find it. Is there like another copy someplace?
You can take mine. Wait a minute.
We didn't engage Larry.
He's glad about that.
Larry, it's good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, sit down.
How about them Steelers, Larry? Good job getting beaten by the Browns. I can't hear you.
That's what he said about what you said.
It's not going to be long.
It's good to see that Gronk and Brady are taking it home now
We
too.
need you. I don't think so. Did you look
No,
over
but
your
they're-
budget?
After they're done with her, they're going back in to finish the budget up. You might want to hang on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay,
You already submitted one a while ago.
Yeah,
We're good. We're good.
okay.
I'll make sure I sit with her mom. The split between buildings.
Okay.
Bill, I believe that these are the few pages that she's going to be talking about.
Okay.
I'll make you some more copies.
She had, I just either didn't bring it or
They're in the
some,
file
Okay.
somewhere.
Asking how his family's doing.
Actually, you might have it right
Well, I know they weren't doing well.
right there.
okay. Yep, that's it. You know. All right, do it have the whole thing? Yep.
So Carol, thank you for coming back.
Oh, you're welcome.
I had emailed you. I think 3 or 4 questions from members of the staff, department heads, okay?
Right.
So if you would go over maybe just a good explanation to the board of what you presented the other day and then try to answer some of those questions.
Okay, sure. I'll do you want me to re-go over what I went over the last time, or?
I was. Yeah, I was, yep.
Maybe just start with the questions then, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, that's okay. I'll, and we're still in the process of making some final modifications. As I indicated the last time, this was the initial work we had, and Ann and Kathy were wanting for budget purposes to get some of the numbers. So that's what we generated. We'll give the final, all the final information with changes will be with the final report and attachments and such next month. But they did provide me with some questions that departments had from some of the information that they were provided, because some were working documents. I think some of the questions will ultimately, that you hear, will be part of the report, but I'll go over the questions overall, so it may answer some questions from department heads and generate some others. There was a question pertaining to having no pay grade for a firefighter paramedic. That wasn't a position we were provided with to include. I think the chief there's going to be someone that's going to ultimately attain that level. We do have in the classification plan a grade for the captain that's also a paramedic at a grade level 9. This one, if there is going to be a firefighter paramedic, would be a lesser grade than that. It might be possibly a 7. I don't know, but it's not one we looked at, so that's why it wasn't in there and it wouldn't be the same as the captain as such. There also was a question pertaining to specific salaries in there as far as providing what the new salary would be for each individual. We discussed with the town the differences between having an open range pay grade with a minimum and maximum, as well as a step system, which would have a grade and several steps. And it was determined from that discussion to generate an open range, which has a minimum and a maximum within each grade level. The grades and the ranges are based on looking at the averages of the communities surveyed, along with considering internal equity for positions within each of those grade structures. If there was a step system, we would be placing employees within the step where they wouldn't receive a reduction in pay based on whatever their current salary is. However, this isn't a step system, so the costs that we gave provided those that were not at the minimum level of the new grade level. That's what the additional cost is. As far as putting them, and that was $13,310, all the other positions fall within the pay grade levels. Now, that being said, and what will be indicated in the report, and I think in talking with Ann and Kathy, the town can ultimately determine where they're going to place people within that range level. So for example, if someone's in I'll just say a grade 10 at $30,000, it can remain that because if it falls within the range, or they can determine if they want to expand those salaries based on, some will do it longevity, some do it based on performance, or a combination thereof. I would only recommend performance if the town has a valid system. Some towns, when they go through a process like this, want to add that so individuals can then move up through a scale. But if they don't have a good system in place, it's not recommended to do it. So I don't know what level, if you have a system or thinking of developing a different system, but those are considerations that the town may want to consider for placing people if they want to give additional increases. There are several positions also that receive stipends, and they're not listed in the pay plan. We had talked about that too, because there are several, such as emergency management and other positions that receive a set stipend. Those stipend positions are going to remain the stipend position. So it could be given to another individual at some point in time. So it's not part of the salary. It's a separate addition to the salary for those positions if they were held. There was also questions pertaining, and this was something we had been looking at regarding the elected positions. Now, some plans don't list elected positions at all on pay plans because they are different in that the salary set and it's approved at town meeting and it's elected officials. So it's a little different than a regular employee. But the town wanted to have those positions listed in there. Currently in there, they're listed, all the elected ones, the tax collector, treasurer, and town clerk are all listed in the same grade level at a 9. However, in the positions, the data we received on salaries with the town clerk, based on the duties, as well as looking at the job description that we'll be preparing, supports having that position at a grade level 9. However, the tax collector and treasurer will probably ultimately be at a grade level 8. Those are part-time positions and they still fall within that grade level. But that's something we haven't finalized as of yet. We also provided a worksheet that was entitled current to market or proposed. There was a question pertaining to the maximum data points on that particular worksheet. And that basically, the data is simply how many comparable matches we had. So if we had for a position, 6 communities that had similar positions, that number would be a 6. So it's just how many. In some cases, you'll see there are a lot of matches. In other cases, they're not. And that's one piece of information we look at. We did send the survey to 14 communities. However, there were 3 of those 14 communities that didn't participate. So the ending result is 11 communities, which is a good number to look at. Also on the benefits summary, there was a question pertaining to health insurance portion, and the municipalities were asked if they have more than one plan, which most do, to list the highest employer contribution plan. So that's what's in there. There also is a question pertaining to those that have Social Security, and those that are listed with a check indicates they do. Now, I don't know on some of these, if we receive additional information, we'll update or correct. We didn't have anything listed in there in Plymouth, and if Plymouth does participate, we would add a check mark in there, but we didn't have that in the information that was provided. So that's something we'll follow up. And also on the benefit summary also, there was one pertaining to compensation practices for differentials. Again, if you have some of those, we weren't provided it, so it lists you don't have them, so we can update that. I can follow up with Ann if you do have those, and we'll add that in, as well as some differentials like on call or callback. If you do have that, we'll add that in. It wasn't provided, so we didn't add that in at the time. Now, those are the overall questions that we received from the departments. And as I say, we'll be making some slight modifications. It wouldn't change any of the budgeting amounts we had there. But what we developed overall was the classification plan which lists all the positions with 18 grade levels and a pay scale. You previously had several more grade levels, and for the size of the community, the 18 grade levels is more appropriate with an open range. So that's something. Now with this, once we submit the final report and all the information, and the board, what normally happens is the board will accept a report. That doesn't mean you need to implement every single thing on there. It's then your classification plan. You can make changes along the way as positions are added or if additional duties. So it's then up to Plymouth to make modifications accordingly. But this is based on the information we had in the review. The same with the job descriptions. We'll be sending those probably the end of next month. They'll be in a format, so as duties change and they need to be modified, added, subtracted, the town can keep those maintained. So that's kind of a overview and response to some of the questions you had. So with that, I don't know if you have other questions that generated, or you want to go over some of the information. I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Just
Carol,
wondering
it's Diane Lynch. I'm the library director. I do have a question for you.
Hi, sure.
I noticed on the page for the library, I'm looking at the estimated fiscal year cost to move employees to new minimum. Under the library, you have the library director, assistant librarian, whom I'm assuming you mean as the assistant director, circulation assistant, circulation supervisor, and then the rest listed as part-time staff. So my concern is, we have several actual librarians here, and for people that don't give a hoot about libraries, to actually be called a librarian in the library world, you have to have actually gone to library school. There is such a thing. Gone and received your master's degree and become an actual librarian, and nobody who doesn't work in a library, I'm sure you couldn't care less about that. But we do have an actual cataloging librarian, and here she's listed as a circulation assistant. So I'm just wondering, is this going to be her job description, her title after this? Because, I thought it might come back as like librarian 1 or something like that, something that would indicate that she's at a certain level of librarian.
This was based on, we can modify those accordingly, titles if there are other titles appropriate. The problem with some of the library, and I know I spoke with you after, in addition, to get some clarification, because the information we initially had totally different titles. So we were trying to combine things and make sure it met what you needed there. So if the circulation assistance, or we need to modify those titles, we can do that, and maybe I'll follow up with you to see what's more relevant there, because the job descriptions will have the requirements and everything on there. But I know many times we do end up changing titles, because even though grade levels may not change, or duties, titles mean something to people in that profession. So I can follow up with you perhaps on some of those to make sure we get them in have the appropriate title that would match. This was based on the final information we had and then talking with the people as to where they were, but we can modify those titles if it's going to work better in the system for you.
Thank you.
Other questions or concerns or thoughts? As I say, I know there's been a lot of information out there, and when it's all put together, it'll be in a better fashion. I think this was kind of working documents for all of you to see, and if there's something triggered that was something we needed to follow up and take another look at, it was a good opportunity to do that before we finalize. And then, as I say, once we send everything and you receive it and accept it, then it's up to the town, that can make modifications, or if you have additional. We did make a couple changes of things, such as you did hire someone for the planning and economic direct. We updated as close as we could with what was going on, but you may have other things coming up down the road.
Chairman?
For you.
Tom
What?
wants you.
I just wanted to say I would like it if we could add that firefighter medic somehow at some point. We will have such a person this year. And that's a significant step up in training and capability when they get that certification. I'd rather we do it now than have to wrestle with it in 6 months.
Tom, could we set up an appointment for the individual that you have, so that they could actually have a conversation with Carol about
Yeah,
what
that'd be great.
how their duties change, maybe in that position versus what they're doing now? So that
Sure,
we can
that's a
get the
good plan.
whole- Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if we have some, if you want on that, then we can generate, I don't know, even with the requirements, if it's going to be the firefighter, and then we could add the additional requirements for the paramedic on that.
Okay.
So it may remain the same, other than, those additional credentials and perhaps some duties. So we can schedule that.
Okay, I will connect them with you, Carol. Thank you.
Okay, great. That way it'll be in the system, and you can, once it is finalized. We try to address as many. You'll probably have some down the road, but then you can add those in. But if that's a known thing that's going to happen, it would make sense to put it in now.
Agreed. Thank you.
Any other questions or?
Carol, this is Jesse.
Hi, Jesse.
Hey, I was looking at the grade scale. I noticed that my position was grade 8.
Right, you're the recycling manager, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess how was that determination made?
Let me just look at some of my information here. That was looked at, looking at the salary data we received for comparable positions. In your case, we had 5 that were comparable for your position. And then looking at what we do is we look at the market and try to match it as close to the average of the market as we can for recruitment purposes. In some cases, we have to go at a higher level. For example, sometimes this happens with IT positions because they can't hire anyone, and it takes such expertise that those positions have to be at a different level. But the norm is looking at the average where it falls, and then also looking at the internal equity. So it falls high enough. We look at various factors on each position to ensure that it falls comparable to others. So in that case, your position falls in line with the highway foreman, a detective, and supervisor of grounds. So that's how the makeup of where the position ends up falling.
All right. So So managerial position falls along with supervisors.
Falls above which supervisor level?
Well, just supervisors in general.
It depends on the, sometimes it's pertaining to title. So that may be, in the case there, we have a highway foreman and a supervisor of grounds that are comparable. So whether any of those positions don't report to you, the manager, you have people under you that are the recycling attendants and such, so you manage them. Sometimes they're interchangeable, and it's something we can look at if based on the titles it needs to be different in there.
Okay.
So what's the grade of the recycling supervisor?
I think it should say on that sheet there.
The recycling supervisor is a grade 6.
Oh, okay.
And Jesse's position's a grade 8, so it's 2. Yeah, so usually, and that's within that system, so it's 2 grades higher than the supervisor, which is, the other supervisor is in a different department with kind of a different function.
Okay.
So Carol, this information is still, I think, being reviewed and processed. As somebody actually sits down and has a chance to review it again, there may be more questions. So you'll be working on the job descriptions over the next month to month and a half, you think?
Right,
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And what I'll do is I'll, in that time frame, we'll finalize those and then working on the report, but during that time period, we'll try to finalize all of this so it's in final format, and then you'll end up with an actual report that has a narrative and explains everything, and we'll have the final classification plan and pay structure, the market date, all of that is part of the report, along with getting the job description. So yeah, if you get and additional questions through there, and we'll follow up with the firefighter paramedic position and that. So any of those types of things in the next month, we can kind of go over and update and finalize. So by all means, let me know, if there are additional questions that come during that time period.
Oh, can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Hi, Carol. This is Josie.
Hi, Josie.
Hi. My other question is, will elected officials such as myself, the treasurer and tax collector, also have job descriptions?
Yes, we were in talking with Ann and Kathy, they wanted to have job descriptions, but because that's one of the questions, some do and some say, well, it's just because I know in your case, there's some of the other duties that are not, just listed under the statute as such. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
they are.
No, I think that's great. Will the list of responsibilities that I created be used at all when generating this job description?
Yeah, some of them we haven't gotten to yours yet, but yeah, that's the purpose of getting that. And we rather have more information than less. That's why we do the interviews plus that. So you'll see some of it in there, some won't be, some is just, too detailed that it's not going to be in there. But yeah, so that'll be in there. And Diane, I'll also follow up with you on the library titles and such. Any other?
Just to make a point to the board, I know that the fire chief, Tom, had mentioned earlier that he's at the, I think, 10% range. Most of your positions, I say most, are in the beginning portions of your ranges. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay.
It was good information to receive for sure.
Yeah, and on that, when you look at the range there, you want to have so people can grow and they're not at the top. Now, sometimes someone will be at the top because they've been there 25, 30 years and, you know, they can't go any further. But that's good if the range is wide enough for them to have movement.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you do have any, and I'll be in touch with all of you that we talked about, but hopefully the information is helpful and you have a good budget season and have everything you need for that piece, and then we'll finalize the rest of this in the next month or so. And
You didn't find any extra money out there anywhere that you could kind of just send this way by chance, did you, in your survey?
No, but there may, you know, keep looking for grants or whatever's there. There's no additional money out there. You're in the same situation that every other community is. They're trying to do the best they can with what they have, and it's unusual times. Some have a better situation than others. I will say overall, though, that Plymouth has kept their system in fairly good shape, despite this is going to kind of consolidate things so you have a more structure and it'll be easier to continue on in the future. But with increases and such, so there weren't a huge number that are way out of range, that sometimes we go to communities and they haven't updated anything for years, and it's a huge cost for them to get things where they should be. I think Plymouth, you should be commended for, you know, keeping up with it as best you could, because it's you're in better shape than many communities are.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, well, good luck with everything, and I'll be in touch with all of you, and nice chatting with you all. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
All right. Finalization of the budget prior to the public hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got, what, 5 days?
Were you gonna, you know, I mean, Joe came back to describe his, you know, you were gonna defend your needs, correct? You wanted some time, and I guess this is your only chance, right?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about some of this stuff, but yeah, there's a couple of things I could defend.
Yeah, I know you started to, and then we kind of shut you down. And he said, well, I just want some time to defend it. Well, this is it. So the only question I had about your selection is Bartlett. And you're going to close it down from the mill down to, yeah,
From the mill up.
well, yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, yep. So now can't you just grind it up and like leave it like a dirt road from the mill up to Reservoir? Or
If I had the money to grind it and regrade it.
you have any idea how much that would cost? Or
No. But all my, they asked me to reduce my 250,000, try to offset to put money towards capital reserve or towards the grader.
right.
I downsized my projects, so that's where that leaves me with Bartlett. Bartlett was on that schedule to do
Yeah,
something.
okay. Yep.
So every time you take a piece of my puzzle, there's a consequence.
Yeah, I wasn't being selfish.
I
but
can certainly get a price and share it with you.
maybe it's because it's not my road, but a lot of people do use it.
I
And every time
I do know there'll be a lot of controversy if I do it.
Yep.
But I get a lot of calls on safety, and everybody has an option to take another route, and that is a crossover. So when I have to cut money, I have to find a place where there aren't houses and deal with the situation at hand.
Yep.
So if I don't want to close it, but if I can find the money to that would just mean my grader would have to maintain another road.
Well, you're out there with old, whatever. What's that word? Phil.
If it holds up.
What, your grader?
Yeah.
Well, then you'll have
Bill,
even more complaints.
what's the cost on Bartlett that you removed from the budget?
So I had got a price to do like 400 feet. There was a section I needed to fix. And so the contractor said that you can't do that because you got to go like 1,000 feet, in order to do something. Because if you're going to rip up a road and you just do that small piece, the water's still going to saturate because it's a total rebuild. So you got to go a distance so the water has a chance to get out and drain. So for 900 feet, I think it was like 130,000, and that's just to fix that one section. And there's like 4 really bad sections on that road. So
Yeah, so even that 130K is not a great investment on that road because it only sort of kicks it down the road a little bit further.
The problem is that road is the material in the road is garbage, and we keep just building on top, trying to buy time. Mm-hmm. So even if I ground it and regraded it, that's you're going backwards. Now you can do it.
I can remember getting stuck out there in mud season before it was paved.
I have my truck struggled to plow it this winter. Imagine trying to run a plow truck across that.
Yeah.
The subgrade is very poor.
It's all rock.
It's going to be expensive to fix.
Yep. It would be that.
Another thing about the amount of traffic that you put over it, you can't, 50 cars a day max on a dirt road? You have to go to asphalt.
Even for as rough as it is, it sees a lot of traffic.
There's no max on a dirt road though, right? You can, because Bell Road probably has more than 50 cars a day.
Yeah.
And I bet you Bartlett's got more than 50 cars. Yeah, it's pretty busy. But
there's so much water between Bell Road and Bartlett Road out in there, and the soils are so poor.
Well, that's part of the problem. Is when I talk about rebuilding, we have to do drainage at the same time, because all the water comes downhill and it runs the length of the high side of Bartlett. And it's a huge amount of water. So in order to fix it right, we have to do some drainage.
Stu, how long has Bartlett been on your list of roads to fix?
Since I took over, 4 or 5 years.
It's been a problem as long as I can remember.
Yeah,
but it never used to get that much travel before.
The reason why it gets passed over and is when I have to do priorities, there's no houses on that road. So I had to make a decision between that and New Hebron, which has lots of houses. And that road needed to be reconstructed and drainage. And so that's how that came about. So
yeah, I don't think there's any question in the prioritization decisions you're making, Joe. It makes sense why you would pass over that road, but at some point.
I know it's not what people want to hear,
right?
But and you'll be surprised how many people that live on New Hebron want to know why I won't fix Bartlett, and yet they live on New Hebron.
there's a lot of people who come down there
Because that's
Yeah.
a well-traveled road.
and just jog over to Bartlett. But
So
No,
so at what point does it reach priority? More of a general question, Joe, just
When I can fund it to fix it is when the priority comes into place.
right.
But there's
it's not
probably
like we'll
always
ever
going to be
have
another.
funding.
Yeah, there's always going to be another road that's more
Right.
important than a road that has no one who lives on it.
Do we just take it off the list then? It seems
gotta-
silly that we're just,
Or do we put a warrant article out and see if the town wants to close the road or pave it?
You got a business and you got a cemetery, and you got like logging operations out there.
right.
I think we should throw it to the voters.
So then what? If they decide to keep it open, how do you
Pay
expect
for
me to maintain it? If you're not going to give me the money to,
Well, no, that's how we would put it on the warrant, right? We would
Gotta pay for
say,
it.
you can,
but if they decide to leave it open, how do you fix it?
well, no, we give them an option. They either say they'll put up the $250,000 or whatever it would take to fix that road right, or we close it.
Okay. I'm up for that.
Yeah, I agree.
I can get you an exact number of that quote.
Hopefully it doesn't get down to like fixing Reservoir Road or.
Well, I
closing
mean,
it
I
down.
think roads that have houses on them, that we really have a responsibility to
Yeah.
make sure they get
Right.
maintained and that they come up in the cycle. But when we're talking about a road that nobody lives on, that's really a convenience road.
Well, but yeah, there's a mill there. There's a mill and there's,
Yeah, the mill is shut down. And they had a big
well,
fire.
it's whoever, who owns it now. It's,
Well, I think that they're just doing firewood in there. And they don't have to go up Bartlett Road. They can go down it.
Right. They can come across yet to get to it.
In fact, I think that's what they do all the time.
cross yet and then up to Mill Road or what? Or, okay. Yeah, warrant article sounds good.
Yeah, let's make a motion.
Okay.
I'll get you an exact number on what I want to do and give you a price.
We'll have to add it to the budget then.
Well, I did have a sheet somewhere, but I don't have it with me.
It was Bartlett.
There was one on Bartlett.
For many years, very few people actually used that road. But we've had so much development out there. And there's just, the population in the area has increased so much.
Are both sides of that road owned by like singular landowners or something? I'm trying to think, why would no development happen on that road?
Dean Yeton owns most of the land.
Okay.
So I have a price here that I got for 300 feet on Bartlett Road. It was 41,000. So he's telling me I need to do a minimum of 1,000 feet. So basically 900 feet is 125,000.
Does 900 feet get you to a place where you feel good about the maintenance of that road, or is that still
That'll
minimal?
be enough where we could open it up enough to keep it safe, and then we could try to maintain the other sections. But the thing is with this, in order for this to be done right, you should do this, like, do that 2 more times. That's just 900 feet of it. You still should go another 2 or 3 times. So this doesn't solve your problem. It opens the road up, but then what do you next year, then what?
Mm-hmm.
So
What do you think, voters?
one of the considerations for the fire department is going to be the fact that we have a water source on Yeton Road
Yep.
near the intersection of Bartlett that would service fires on Reservoir Road. So that's something we would want to consider.
You could bring that up at town meeting.
Fair
Yep.
enough.
I'm willing to bet that when you rip that road up, you're going to find logs under it.
Probably wasn't
we-
corduroy
we-
road, right?
We've done sections over and over, and you just pull the rocks out, and they just resurface.
So doing 900 feet will keep it open so people can go through.
900 feet will keep me from shutting it down.
At 125,000.
And if we have to do that 3 times, we do each year.
Well, I'm just saying it'll open it for now, but it doesn't resolve the fact that I still have issues that we can use some of our other road construction to piecemeal that for now. But but I will probably reintroduce another bill like this either next year or the following year
I'm
to do
saying
another
if
section.
You think you have 3 years, we do a warrant article for each year to fix whatever portion we need to fix.
Yes.
And
I'm
then-
still a little confused. So what's the Bartlett item for? It's for Mill Road to Yetton?
No, it's up on the top. There's a section that's really bad on the top section.
No, I'm talking about like your this thing is to
Reconstruct a section of road.
300 feet from Mill Road to where? This the
900 feet.
The top. Basically, the hill to the top is a section.
okay. So, but
Bill,
you're
you know
still
where the pumps are.
yeah, but you're still putting in from like Mill Road down to where?
I'm not going
Oh.
down to the mill.
Okay, I thought you were doing like a Bartlett piece.
I am doing a Bartlett piece, but it's above the mill.
You have to keep
Oh, okay. I thought I understood that you were going to make certain that you're going to like fabricate or make sure that from the Mill Road down to Yetton would be repaired or whatever.
So that section I got to leave open. So even though it's rough, that's not the worst section.
Okay. No, I know that. Yeah.
Section that I'm going to leave open.
All right. So you're not going to do anything below Mill Road.
Not as of right now. No,
Okay. All right. So this would be
that's above the mill.
Yep.
The reservoir.
So it's 300 feet.
No.
No, it's more than that. Yeah.
Sorry,
900 feet.
900 feet from reservoir
Reservoir
down Bartlett.
Yeah, down to I guess below Mill Road, actually. But
So if we say from reservoir along Bartlett Road, 900 feet.
How long is that road total? You think it's 3 times that length, Joe? Is that what you said?
What's that?
yeah, how
That
long?
road total is 3 times that length?
Yeah, I got to do a total length. I mean, I got to do a total length of it, but
Thanks.
I'd say that the really bad sections. I mean, there are some sections down further. I think you could get away with not having to reconstruct. You could grind them and pave them, but there's probably at least 2 to 3 more sections that need that same exact scenario. And the same on New Hebron. We're only doing a section of New Hebron, and that's in the same boat. So
That's up near Dennis Downing's house.
Yeah, that's shot, and there's always like speed bumps, all up through there.
Roger Wiggett down to Dennis Downing.
Yeah. And even beyond that, right to the horse, the paddock there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. So, no, I'm just thinking that, so if we make it a warrant article and does the town agree to expend $250,000, something like that, to repair Bartlett Road? Otherwise, we close it down.
yeah, the section that I want to close down, if we spend 125,000, I can fix it so it's drivable, and we can leave it open.
But then the impact is what, like a dime, a dime on top of 1,000? What would their impact be if they said, I'm not going to pay 5 cents per thousand on my, taxes, I'm let it close down. That's,
Like I said, I'm just going by what people send me emails and they call me on the phone and tell me that road's unsafe.
it is.
And I go, I know. So it was on my list, and you're asking me to downsize and fix the roads, and so I have to pick the one with the houses on it. And so that's
I understand, yeah.
They
I was just,
decide we'll do it.
So you're looking at 125,000 for 900 feet.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
And we'll put that on and you guys can make recommendations after your public hearing,
yep,
right? Okay.
all right.
So if we go.
Is that it?
And I would put it out to bid too. I have a price on it, but I would put it out to bid and make sure the quote comes in. It might even come in less. I doubt it, but.
All right. Thank you.
So-
See, we do listen to you, Joe.
Could we start, I'm trying to bring you back to the budget as a whole again.
Beginning.
Okay, so Kat,
So I'm looking at the budget that has the town manager recommendations on it. All the departments have this. They have this. If we could start on page 1, just to see if there's anything in the executive that you would recommend changing prior to your public hearing. Do you have that, Bill?
yeah, do someplace.
It looks like it's.
Something get done,
That right
like
there.
right here?
Say
Okay, anything
executive.
before that? Nope.
Yep.
Okay,
There was a recommendation that came through to bring that town manager position up to the minimum rate. I didn't know if there was any consideration at that time of that position.
That wasn't in our budget.
It's not in your budget, no. Right now, that budget is under from last year's by $70,602. Ooh.
Is that
Lights
over
go
my
out.
head? Over my head?
Yeah.
Why did that go off?
Fan went out too.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see now, Bill?
Yeah, I think I can see now, yeah, it's very bright.
There is a current contract with your town manager, so you may have to review that as well.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I thought we were going to start with my recommendations.
Well, I'm trying to go through the budget just to get us through the budget.
Yeah.
Entirely. So you didn't have any recommendation on there?
Not for me, no.
Pull back.
Yeah, I would say hold it.
Hold it, okay. Election registration vital stats. The increase initially was, a decrease of $4,924. There's 2 recommendations from the town manager. One, the town clerk had spoke of earlier, dropping that increase down to 3%. And then there was another line for town clerk fees, dropping that down by another 2,000. And I believe Josie, Kathy had spoke to you about those, correct?
Yeah, we did have that conversation. I was curious, and I'm in agreement. But I'm curious when the wage study will be looked at.
Didn't she say she'd be have another month with it?
Yeah, I mean, the entire wage study is not going to be completed. Those are preliminary numbers for budget purposes, just so that we can at least see whether or not we are even in close to range, or within the range.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be another probably month and a half to 2 months before the board actually accepts the entire plan.
Okay.
Okay.
So is the board,
And will that have an effect on the 2022 fiscal budget that we're preparing right now?
I think most of the wages, as we just talked about, the town manager, there was a recommendation to increase. At this time, they haven't made a decision really on that yet. It could.
Well, I thought we were going to go 3% on that, or am I mistaken?
If you're talking about the town clerk's pay, the recommendation and an agreement was to bring that back down to 54,590.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I had on mine. But I was talking about also on the town manager situation. We have no increase there.
There is a 3%.
Oh, okay.
Within that. So you want to keep that at the 3%? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what I thought we were going to do. Yes.
We haven't decided on that.
Okay.
On the topic of the town manager, town administrator line, it looks like we overspent that pretty heavily.
Yeah. That was Paul's
previously, and
retirement.
track to do so
You
again.
had a town manager, a town administrator who left after having a very large contract, and there was a huge buyout when the individual left.
Okay, so that the buyout is part of why that's way over.
That's why it was so far over.
And that carried over both from the 1920 budget and is also affecting the 2021 budget.
Yes, it
But
did.
won't affect the one that we're looking at now.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
So will the pay be reevaluated before a town meeting is what I'm trying to ask, because I'm fine returning back to what was the figure, 54,000 roughly?
54,590.
Yeah, but I think part of my proposal was to have a conversation with the Board of Selectmen about looking at the position and the responsibilities involved to potentially influence or increase the salary for the next budget fiscal year.
Josie, this is the last meeting prior to the public hearing, so I would think the board may entertain any conversations you have right now.
All right, so we got an issue. If we are to entertain that suggestion and then we modify it to whatever the proposed grade levels that are, then we're gonna have to go right down the line. And I know I'm at a point of probably like, who feels comfortable in going down through the new existing grades and modifying, or the proposed grades and modifying salaries to target. Okay, well, actually, because unfortunately, the estimated costs aren't filled in. So
Estimated costs that you are seeing that are filled in there, Bill,
are ones that are,
just to bring those employees up to minimum. Nobody else is out of range. So there's only like.
all right, so the minimum is what though? It's the hourly rate plus 3%, assuming that there was gonna be like a 3% raise, or what?
Sorry, I didn't pull that back out when you were.
Because
So if you look at the initial position on the very top, it says manager. It shows you, if you go across, the salary of that manager for an hourly rate. Shows you what that is. And then it shows you what the minimum proposed is and the maximum proposed. To bring that individual or that person up to the minimum is the increase that you're seeing on the side.
okay, so that's
Okay.
exceptional. But look, if you look at page 2, and you got like a dispatch supervisor, grade 8, hourly rate's 24.73. And then the proposed grade is a 7, and the proposed minimum is 21.98. And that's a bite from the hourly rate that's currently being paid. So therefore it falls.
No,
on
because it's not suggesting to bring people down to the minimum.
Right.
It
No,
does
no,
say-
but Ann was saying that, you know, they're based on the minimum. Well, actually, I think it was Carol that was saying that it was like, the minimums were, you know, what, so regardless. So therefore, the 24.73 would be on the spectrum of 21.98 to 30.77. And you just, so therefore, we make sure that the hourly rate, the current hourly rate is met. And then we decide whether or not 3% is going to be like the percentage that we're going to do for the non-union employees.
Mhm.
So, and or the, because when we hired, the only thing that's kind of like outstanding, besides the unions, which we still might be negotiating. Did we sign a contract with the
For
unions?
1 year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the 3% is,
It's in there for
Yep.
now.
and also the new land use planning director.
Yeah.
That's a done deal as well.
Mhm.
For anyone that's not on a contract
Mhm.
or not in a union, then the 3% may not be an assumed increase as we go into the new proposed grades. That's what I was trying to say.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if
Yes.
I may interject.
Yep.
My board, Library Board of Trustees, has not yet had a chance to review these figures. We're meeting on Thursday, and I did send them the information to review in advance of our meeting, but they have not yet seen these modified figures. So in terms of the library, at least, they, from my discussions with them informally, because of Right to Know, we cannot have a meeting, you know, over email. They agree that we can go along with the proposed pay plan that Carol has presented to us. But in terms of the actual figures, we have not had a meeting to discuss them yet. So I think if the library itself could abstain from this process for now and just agree to go along with the pay plan itself, that would be the position we would prefer to take.
Okay. All right.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Sure. Well, and is Josie still on, or she?
I think she
Left
stepped
her
away.
desk.
Nope, there she is.
Sorry, I'm multitasking.
So, what say you as far as where we are with you were going to have more discussions with Carol as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I proposed a significant salary increase based on, you know, what I think, based on my experience, and then also the responsibilities, as well as service increases over the past year, as well as what I plan on increasing within the next year. So I suppose what I'm asking is, if the salary is going to be roughly 54,000, does this mean that the board is going to look at the wage study, not this upcoming fiscal year, but the next one?
Ooh.
John has a hand up.
Yeah. Bill, we were talking about it before, but I think what we need to do is look at what we have. There's a few that we have to bring up to the minimum, and then look at the difference in this report over the next budget year, and then start implementing that. But to try to, I think Ann would say, to try to get that in and get that going on this budget, it would be pretty hard. Ann?
I can do whatever you'd like.
Well, I know you can, but I think there's a lot to digest here, and to go through and come up with something that we have a hearing on and then change that before we go to the town meeting, I don't think would be,
You'd have to have multiple hearings, and I know you don't have time for that, so.
yeah.
Well, we got two hearings.
I would, right, you got one coming up on Monday.
Yep.
And then the next one
February
is
4th.
third. Maybe just go through and review Kathy's recommendations as she indicated, and the few recommendations from the budget committee tonight. And see if there's any changes you want to make.
And then if we could get those changes that we can look at before Monday night.
So Kathy, where are your recommendations?
It should be to the right.
They're to the far right.
Yeah, Kathy,
Recommendations.
Yeah,
over
okay.
here.
my handout has her recommendations.
That again?
I said I have your recommendations.
Okay,
Yep.
so you should have it. to
Yeah,
the
we
right.
had, yep. All right, so,
Basically, my recommendation was to leave it at the 3% for now, that unless, Bill, you wanted to discuss something other for non-union employees, but my recommendation is to leave it at the 3% across the board, with the exception of, I think there was 3 or 4 EMTs that Tom had talked to the board about prior to that he wanted to bring their salaries up to closer to where they should be. And that's already in the new budget. But if you start with page 1 and you decide, you see if you have any questions on it, or if you approve just going with the 3% for now. And we can look at the wage study later on and determine for the next budget, who needs to be brought up.
okay, well, I do have a problem with the 3% for the non-union employees. And I think we've had a rough year. Our revenue's way down. I don't want our taxes to increase substantially. And we're already going to be whacked by the school, and we're going to have a tax increase too. So I feel that, just tighten our belts and not do 3%, maybe even 1.5. And you ended up, did you end up taking, did you estimate 1.5? It was some paper
We
that.
did it at 2%. That was like a
I didn't
20,
do 1.5.
2%,
2% was like what,
23,000 savings.
23?
You
So
get
you're
half of that
saying
here if you would
all
do it.
non-union employees at 1.5%.
Well, to be frank, coming from the state employment where, the governor kind of like knock us down to zip for multiple years in a row without, working with a contract, but, it could be actually zeroing it out. And just because we've been, I know the argument on, like Steve's side or, Tom's is, well, we count on that 3% in order to maintain a baseline. Otherwise, staff will leave. I don't think that's entirely true. And we've been doing 3% for what, 5 years, 6 years in a row. So, I mean, how many times have we just renewed the contract? 3%, 3%, 3%. So I think we are realistically at, we could zero it out without, terribly impacting the employees, knowing that we're going to have, also theoretically too, we're getting stimulus funds that are coming down the pike. And I fully expect that President Biden is going to be at least allocating municipal monies, which is now in the stimulus package. So we'll be getting revenue in.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Now, it won't affect whatever we decide on now, because we're not going to have like a check, in hand to offset what we might think are expenditures. But I imagine that's coming down the pike.
Okay.
Hopefully it doesn't go through Gopher and then it gets like referred to some ski area or something like that, but, thank you, Mary Ann, for getting
Phil,
my.
sorry. I thought I was on mute.
So, anyway, I am kind of proposing reducing the expected raise of 3% and I'm wondering what the board might think about that.
When you say
For non-union,
3% to 1.5 or 2%,
I
I'm
was
looking,
thinking of 1.5 to 0, actually.
okay, so which number are you,
Well, I'm wondering how much it's gonna, be generated by that. It might be, the ultimate insult to zero it out and only save like 50 grand.
that's probably what it's gonna be, right?
yeah,
Well,
2%,
if Ann did the math and it was shaving 1% was 23,000, then we're talking 69 if you remove all
Right.
three.
69,000 or thereabouts. All right, well, is there discussion on that? Knowing that
Neil, you're muted and John had his hand up.
I'm muted?
No, Neil is muted.
Oh,
Yeah, I was wondering how it's going to affect the tax rate.
less than Bartlett Road will.
Bartlett Road was a dime, is that what you were saying?
Mhm.
we'll put the raise on a warrant as well.
We could do that.
I think I'd feel comfortable with, I'm not a fan of the zero, but given this new report that Carol put out with the wages and the job descriptions, hopefully, there's nobody really, other than town manager, that's underpaid as it is. I haven't looked at them deeply to know if everyone's in the middle, but certainly we're not underpaying anybody other than Cap.
I think the
You've
majority
got a
of,
few at the library.
Yes, there were a few at the library, you're right.
You've got a few, yeah.
Right, but in comparison, overall, you're looking at a good 85% are at the right salary. I'll use right, kind of maybe overreaching, but because I haven't dived deep into them, but they all seem to look towards them right in the middle. So I don't think it's that we're asking too much. In my opinion, not to go off, the 3% doesn't seem, and I come from a different world, but it was based on, there was a min and max, but it was based on the review process in theory. And so I'd like us to see us go towards something like that, as opposed to everybody gets 3%. That just doesn't seem fair.
John?
yeah,
Yeah.
my thoughts, listening to everybody is maybe this year do 2%, and then next year take a look at it, look at what's proposed out there from the study, and come up with something different for next year that incorporates everything, that incorporates her figures and where we need to go as a town.
I just want to say too that, I did say that, we've been giving everybody 3% for the past, 5 or 6 years or something like that, which is quite a hefty sum. And actually during negotiations, which we didn't get to the point because of all extraneous issues and stuff, but I would have liked to have knocked it down to 1.5. Or actually Ashland had something like, was it 3, 2, and 1 or whatever? Was it a biennium or 2 years or 3 years?
I don't know.
I think it was 3.
So I think they were taking it down to 1. So I don't think a 1.5 is that a negative thing to offer regardless. Or zeroing it out.
What does the rest of the board think, Neil?
Well, I guess my greatest concern is that if we let our tax rate jump up too high, it's going to have a deleterious effect on attracting commercial investment, which is what we really need to increase our tax base. And I think we need to really try to hold the line. 2020 has been a disaster of a year, and everything's in flux. And I think maybe we should just you maybe go 0. I know nobody likes that, and everybody's going to hate me for saying it, but you know, I think sometimes you got to pull your belt in.
Marianne, what do you?
Yeah, as I expressed earlier, just, looking at, the mins and max, the recommendations for the way of going forward, we pay fair. So I'm okay with going 0 for this year and kind of reevaluating our process.
Zach?
I would support 0 or 1.5. That being said, I think there's some other line items when you start to look at the budget that we shouldn't ignore. We've got a proposal from the chief, I think, still in here to add another position at the fire station. That's a unionized position. That one's got the guaranteed 3% probably as they negotiate in the future. Those are much more costly positions. And I feel for the chief. I see the fire truck go by my house twice a day as they respond from one call to the next. I think we've got the same thing in the recycling, department. They're asking for a new position. I think if we're going to say 0 or 1.5%, we probably also shouldn't be increasing our head count at the same time. To me, those things really go hand in hand.
True. Okay.
I want to say something right now. This is Jesse. I'd like to speak to the board.
Hey, Jesse, go ahead.
So I'm hearing what you're all saying. I can foresee something happening within the town or with the town employees, and that's forming their own union. So that's just a consideration for the board.
What do you see happening with the town employees?
That a union could be formed with the non-union members.
That what?
That a union can be formed by the non-union members.
Okay, well, that's fine. They won't be under the contract that's currently in effect with the union. And if it's a different union, then you have to negotiate with the town. But I mean, that's, okay, that'd be fine. So, but I do agree actually with Zach as far as like, positions that may be proposed now that that may be not budget killers, but may not be the right time to go forward with those.
Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Just I don't want to beat a dead horse. I know we went through this last time, but I just want to reiterate that I and our staff have identified that new position as a critical need if we're going to continue to answer 911 calls in a timely fashion. We are exceedingly relying on mutual aid, which is not okay. That's not the way it's supposed to work. As an example, yesterday we were on a chimney fire with all of our staff when naturally a suicide call came in at the same time. And that call had to be handled by the Hebron Fire Department, which is not ideal. And, that should be the exception and it's the norm. Thank you.
So tell me though, if we're doing mutual aid and nobody's kind of like helping us out, or that the help that they offer we don't think is adequate, is mutual aid something you can appeal? That this is kind of a ludicrous arrangement that we are now the prime in a mutual aid agreement that we don't get anything out of?
I'm sorry, it's a two-way street. I mean, we use mutual aid and they use us. I think it's 50-50. We can produce those stats easy enough.
I think mutual aid's the backbone of a good rural fire service.
Right, and you know, they expect to get called and they don't ask questions like yesterday, but that's not ideal. If I'm a Plymouth taxpayer in that situation yesterday, to have to wait for an ambulance from Hebron, you know, that's a problem that as fire chief, I want us to avoid.
But Tommy, if we're doing mutual aid, that's the purpose of it. I mean, when we set up a system like that, it's so that everybody helps everybody. And if there's an excess, then they come to our aid, correct? But what you're saying is you want to be able to handle.
Froze up, John.
Okay.
Nope, you're back.
Okay.
I'm concerned about
Are we
Plymouth.
going
That's my responsibility.
I think all of us are, but if Plymouth is using our assets for mutual aids to other towns, then it should not be something for Plymouth people. You know, if we want to take care of Plymouth, let's get out of mutual aid. But we can't do that because sometimes it takes everybody. And I think, you know, I hear what you're saying.
The problem too is becoming that, and no knock on the area communities. They're doing the best they can with call and volunteer forces, but those are diminishing as we speak. Nobody's signing up to do this on a call or volunteer basis. Very few people. And I said this 2 weeks ago. Well, we're not alone in that. People are having to resort to career positions
I think
that
that's
adequately respond to calls.
Frozen up again.
Is that John?
You're in and out.
You look for John. Go ahead.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm just saying if we're going to get to the point where we just want to take care of our own, then that's something we're going to have to look at on a long range basis. That Plymouth is not going to do mutual aid, and we're going to take care of Plymouth only. And is that where we want to go?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, the taxpayers are, I mean, we have a lot of seniors that, I mean, it doesn't look like much to somebody that's got a full-time job and a husband and wife both working. But if you're sitting out there on a fixed income, it's crazy. And it costs money.
All right, so I guess first things first, though, let's focus on the wage increase, the annual wage increase, and then look at positions. Okay. Or so, is there a motion? Too premature?
Oh, you were making the motion, Bill.
I move we zero out our tax increase. Just fit the numbers, make it right.
Your wage increases except for union?
Yeah.
Okay. Is your tax?
No, I was being facetious. But,
okay.
No one laughed at that one either, Bill.
No.
So I guess, is there a motion to provide 0% wage increase for non-union employees for this upcoming year?
I'll move.
All right,
I'll
Neil
second.
moved. Neil
I'll
moved.
second.
Marianne seconded. Zach, your vote.
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
John,
Nay.
Neil,
Aye.
Bill, aye. Okay. Now we're going to look at your recommendations. Is that
The first change would be on page 1, where the
So-
town clerk fees. reducing that down to 10,000, and Josie has agreed to that. So I just,
Okay.
So on that particular line item, based off what we just discussed, would that be a 0% instead of a 3?
yes. And the next,
And can I say something real quick?
yep, it's,
Okay, yeah. You know, after listening to the board's discussion, I agree with what Neil had to say. I think we do have to tighten our belts, and I'm included in that. A lot of people have been struggling in our community, and I see that in this office because we do serve an elderly population who are living on fixed incomes, and they come in and they have conversations with us in here and other departments as well. And I think what John was saying is if we can use this information from the MRI study to someday evaluate positions, have conversations with department heads, look at what they're at, and maybe there should be an increase, then I support that. So I'm okay with that 0% with not taking a raise at all.
Thank you, Josie.
Yeah.
Okay.
looks like the next,
The fees are being reduced by 2,000.
Yep. The next change is coming from the budget committee, which is going to be on page 4. Into page 5. The recommendation was to remove the, sorry.
Like, whack the mic.
The recommendation was to move the administrative assistant to the chief to the police department.
All right, what was that? Yeah, the,
It's on page 5.
oh, what the hell?
And what we'll do is we'll take that salary and benefits out of that line and move it into the police department. Steve,
Fine with me.
you guys all set with that?
Yep.
Are we going to run through all the town administrator recommendation or town manager recommendations and then sort of vote on them in a block?
I was just trying to hit the budget as we went through.
Okay. I have some questions about things that we could consider reducing in the police section as well.
All right.
I don't know if this is the time to talk about that or it should come.
Yeah,
later.
I guess this is the time. This is whether or not we,
Where are you starting, Zach?
The overtime regular police budget line item, which is again on page 4.
4114.
It looks like in 2019, that was significantly underspent and the trend looks similar this year. Yeah, we have 70, almost 73% of that budget remaining. We're about halfway through the year. We underspent it last year. Looks like we're going to underspend it again this year.
Caution everybody about, and everybody's been talking about it, this has been an odd year. And yeah, we haven't had as many calls for service. We also didn't have a spring fling, a homecoming, any of that other stuff. That's why that money's not being spent out of there. By next year, or by 2022, when you're going to have this budget, all those things are coming back again. So just please remember that we're not spending it now, but when this budget comes around, we will be spending it then.
That's fair, Chief, but I don't see what the justification is then for the increase that's proposed.
Increase is because the union raises. That's why the 3%. I got to roll that into the increase because the pay goes up as well. So that means that you know if you're paying $3 now and then you have a 3% increase, that figure's rolled into overtime as well.
Okay. Regardless of those cautions, we looked like we were underspent by about $45,000 last year, which didn't have it had a little bit of COVID towards the end, but for 1/4 of it. And then we're going to be underspent again this year. It does feel like in a belt tightening year, that's one. I'm not saying we should slash it by $40,000. I think that would be unwise, but if we're looking for areas to tighten our belt, to me, that one looks like an area where we could consider doing a light belt tightening.
And I get it. And again, I'm going to tell you that also don't forget we didn't have students here. We weren't dealing with that either. So that plays a big factor in that overtime line and spending that overtime line. Also people's, vacations, sick time, stuff like that gets rolled into that, that factor as well. If somebody calls in sick or takes a vacation, we have to fill those shifts. So like I said, I just want to caution people about, taking money out of that line.
Are we so warned? Or
So warned. The other line items that I was going to point out also under the police budget, it looks like we pretty consistently underspend on the office expense line. I don't know if did we do any electricity updates, because it looks like the electricity line is pretty consistently underspent. And then I don't know if global warming has caught up with us, but they're not using quite as much heating oil.
The last building improvement, yes, we did. We converted almost all of our lights to LED. And then, some of the heating systems as well. We had a lot of mini splits systems installed.
Gotcha. So maybe those upgrades are paying off, and we could tighten a little there.
I guess it depends on what you're talking about for tightening.
like $2,000, $4,000, something like that, or?
I mean, even if you took, it's little things, but if you start to take, $1,000 here, $1,000 there, these line items start to add up.
What specific line item are you looking at right now?
So the office expense is 4210 20001. My proposal would be to knock 2,000 off that line item.
Zach, which line item was that?
4210 200-01.
Gotcha.
Is there an agreement?
No, I don't agree.
How about the board? No one's brave enough to. Come on, Mary Ann, you could do it.
Come on, I did enough bad things today.
Bill, I got knocked off. So what did we just discuss?
You just agreed to knock off $2,000 of the PD's office expense.
So,
nobody agreed to anything.
So I'll get really specific.
Yeah, then make a motion, huh?
I think we could save some money in this particular area of the police budget with some tightening, because it looks to me like last year and this year there are some budget line items that they're not expending at the rate that are budgeted, which is great. Honestly, Chief, at the end of the year, you usually come back and say, I've got extra money. That's usually the result that we've seen.
No, usually the result is I can't spend, and I'm told I cannot spend any more money, and I get cut off. So we go without at the police department. I'm not able to keep up with technology, replacing computers, stuff like that.
I don't understand that necessarily because one, in 2019, you showed that you gave back 50,000 out of your general fund at the end of the year. You didn't spend $50,000. Now, that's 2019, 2020. I don't remember the end of that year you coming to the board and saying, hey, I've got this money left over. I want to prepay for these expenses that I'm behind on.
Correct, because it's been, so you know, I have been the chief now. We're going to be going on 9 years. There hasn't been a single year where I've been able to spend my budget down the way.
So is that advice coming from the town manager?
That's coming from, yes, we get from either the town manager or town administrator, yes. I've never been able to, and Tom can attest to that. We've never been able to spend our budgets down. We have gotten limited every single year.
Usually what happens, Zach, is we get to the point where we start looking at revenues. Are we going to make our revenues for the year? And usually around March and April, we get to the point where our revenues are not going to be met. Our budgets are tight. So you say to the departments, whatever you haven't done right now, you're not going to do. And that's what they say to them. And that allows them to turn back the money to offset the revenues that we didn't get. Over and over and over again. I think I've been here for 7 years and it's been done every year.
Why do we function like that then?
Again, trying to keep the tax rate down. Otherwise, if every department spent every penny that they had and we didn't reach our revenues, you're not looking at $1 or $2 on your tax rate. You're going to be looking at 5 or 6 because we don't get the revenues in.
But if we know we're not going to get the revenues in,
we don't know that until March or April. We're already 3/4 of the way through the year.
So arguably,
I want to also remind people that that also includes, there are shifts where we run light. There is literally, when I get cut off, somebody calls in sick, sorry, there's one person covering the whole town. Now we've gambled with this for a while and we've come out on top, and that's fine. You know, if that's a risk that you guys want to keep taking.
Nothing that I'm talking about directly speaks to your staffing.
The overtime does, absolutely does.
Well, it only does if you're spending it. I mean, I'm talking about reducing a budget line item by, let's get specific, and I'll say by $10,000, which is less than 1%, less than a 1% reduction in your overtime budget. And you are currently underspent it in the prior year by $45,000, 4.5 times what I suggested. And it looks like you're going to repeat that again this year. Now, maybe 2021 comes and you have a real problem there, but the data doesn't support that.
Mm-hmm.
So my suggestion is that we reduce that by 1%. I think overall you can do a little bit of tightening on your particular budget, and I think that adds up to real money. You know,
Zach,
I think you can kind of total a 20K out of the police general budget without it making a huge impact on your overall operation.
Sorry, John was saying something.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, like the chief says, sometimes they have to, they're cut off for the last quarter. And I hear what you're saying, Zach, but if he's got to sit there and, okay, we're going to run, a light shift, then we don't have coverage. And like he says, you're sitting there looking at some major events that we didn't have in the last year to account for it. And, he probably would have spent 95% of that money had he been allowed to do the things that he was planning on doing. And he did not spend the money due to the fact that his department helped cover the revenue. And they've done it every year when we've been short in revenue. They've been cut off, and that's where the majority of the money's come from. And sooner or later, guys, if somebody, okay, we cut the money and we're light on a shift and something happens, that's going to be on us. It's not going to.
I hear what you're saying, John, but I've been to every select board meeting we've had in the past year, and I don't remember us discussing how we needed to cut off the budget for the chief and he needed to run light shifts. Maybe the town manager's making those calls, but
we do not discuss that. In the past, Paul Freitas has gone to the chief and said, look, we're going to be short $200,000. Can you not use this, not use that, and put it back in? He goes without doing things that we approved on a budget so that we don't end up with a big hit. That's not
okay, so here's my current feeling. When we look at the budget, we look at the town office, effectively they've kind of funded flat, right? When we look at this budget for the town office, between the cuts and the reorganizations and the various line items that Kathy has put forth here, they're pretty much flat. When we look at the police department, they're plus 3%.
Yep.
When I look at the fire department, they're plus 20%.
Yep.
Something's got to give. We just had a conversation about how something's got to give. And I don't know if we don't make hard decisions, I don't know how we control the tax rate in this town.
I get it, and I get the hard decisions, but it feels like I'm getting punished for doing a better job budgeting than the other department heads are. That's ultimately what I'm getting. I get cut off, and I abide by the rules when I get cut off and don't spend or do what I have to do to get it done. And yet now I'm suffering even further for it.
We all get cut off in the spring, and we end up kicking the can down the road on items that we had planned to purchase. We try to do long range planning. That's our job as managers, and we get that it can't always be funded, but we've been kicking the can down the road for a long time.
So yeah, I ask again then, so 7 years in and we're still continuing that same process of kicking the can? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we keep doing that? It doesn't work.
When we don't get enough money in our budget and we are to the point where we're going to overspend our budget in the spring, we have to draw the line. We have to stop spending.
Can't overspend.
Well, it seems like we need to plan better. We need to know.
We need more money. We need more money.
It's not predicting revenue too.
Right, there is no predicting revenue. So Zach, I just wanted to point out one thing. The police budget, the police department has, I think, 4 different areas within their budget that they're budgeting for. So if you go to the total police department line, they're up by 75,000.
Yep, that's 3%.
I think it's half of the resource officer is refunded to us by the school. So that brings their line to 15,000 over.
No, the resource officer is only accounting for 7,200 of that total.
Right.
The $75,000 increase, 7,200.
No. I'm saying that the total, yeah. Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying.
But we talk about the expenses.
We get half of the resource officer budget back. That's 60 grand. That's what I'm saying. So if you take
some of our lines too, we have zero control over. I have $145,000 in increases between Blue Cross and the New Hampshire retirement system. And I'm sure Chief LaFave is in a similar boat. We have no control over that.
Right.
No, but you do have control over line items. So custodial supplies. No one yet this year has asked you to cut back on custodial supplies. You've got 75% of your budget left at the midpoint of the year. That tells me you're not going to spend 100% of that.
You're talking about fire or police?
I'm talking about police as an example, as one of the line items that I think is worth considering. Say, I mean, again, the students make the overtime one a very complicated one to look at. You've only spent 72% of that. I mean, you get 72% of that left. You know, if you look at, I don't know, what's a good one? The tires, you know, we're underspent on that. We're underspent. I mean, the heating season is just starting, so that one's a tough one. Electricity, you know, you go down the list. I think the electricity and the heating is such a good example because we go to the town and we say, we're going to do infrastructure updates to make this cheaper for us to operate. But then we don't reduce the budget line item. So then the town doesn't realize that savings.
They do when you get it back at the end of the year. When I don't spend the budget, like for instance, I get cut off and then I give the money back, they're getting the money back that I didn't spend. That's going all back to the general fund. So yes, they are seeing that savings.
So Zach, you're saying that potentially you see within his budget, or I'm sorry, within the police department budget line items alone, that instead of being up 10,008, that you're potentially seeing that 20,000 could be taken out of there?
Yep.
That line, okay.
And honestly, we could round that down. I think that by we could make minor adjustments to the police budget to make the main police budget flat funded this year.
I would recommend that you say to the chief, as you can say to any other department head, find 10,000 in your budget. Find 10,000.
Honestly, what I would say to all the department heads is that this is a tough year, and I cannot understand how in good conscience anybody put forth budgets that weren't flat.
Because that's our responsibility to provide for what we believe is in the best interest of public safety. Is that not our charge? To let the people know what we think they need to have a safe community, which is the number 2 question when people move to town. Is it safe? What's going to happen when I call 911? Ask any real estate agent. The first question is about the school district if they have kids. The second question is it safe? What's going to happen when I call 911?
I think actually the first question is what's my tax rate, because they're going to have to pay the taxes. But I get your point that it's definitely in the top 3. And I honestly don't disagree with a lot of the proposals that are in here. What I'm challenging is that there are budget line items that we're not talking about. There are areas where we're asking for money. That's great. But we're not looking at a line item where we're not spending the money that we're saying that we're going to spend. And so if we make some small adjustments to that, we can do the things we want to do within the budget without having line items that are inflated that we're not spending.
Yes, John.
Hey, Zach, it's Jesse.
Well,
I mean, we as department heads, we do the best we can on our budgets. And sometimes things happen within a year that we can't predict. And that's the reason why there may be a little bit of fluff in those budgets. You know, and on top of that, I've been a manager for almost 5 years now, and the town has asked us to do more and more services with the same budgets. That's not how this works.
yeah, John.
I think if we're going to recommend any adjustments, we need to look at adjusting the bottom line and letting the department head cut what he thinks he can cut. I mean, that's I mean, you can talk to past selectmen for the past 10 years, and we have said we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem, and it still remains that. I mean, we're bringing in $1 million less than we did in 2008. That's and we're running everything. And I mean, this is why our infrastructure, our equipment is where it is. but we're doing the best our department heads are trying. And I think, you know, I mean, if we're going to cut anything, and like Ann says, say, okay, cut it by 10,000, let the department head cut it. Not let the select board, you know, pick the deal. We want $10,000 from them. Let them pick the area. That's my say.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with John. But I think we got to make the cuts. And I think that it's best to let the department heads make those decisions.
How do we decide how much we're going to ask each department? How would that actually?
Pick departments with big budgets, first of all, because like a 10% cut for like Jesse or something like that might be pretty significant, you know. Well, it is for every department, but larger budgets can accommodate that a little better. So.
I mean, in the case of Jesse's budget, if we don't support the addition of moving that part-time to full-time, his budget is flat funded.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So
The,
if you're
the cuts
looking at
that the town manager has proposed for our budget is in the neighborhood of $100,000 already, which I respectfully disagree with. I wouldn't want to go any further.
So Steve's overall budget is up $75,003.
And you're going to get 60,000 back from the school. The
Not
resource
additional
officer.
revenue that we didn't get in previous years.
That's already accounted for.
Okay.
John, you have to budget for the amount to get the
Okay. I just
return.
I heard somebody say 75, but you get 60 reimbursement from the resource officer. So
We get half of their budget back from the resource officer.
Right, and you do for parking and you do for dispatch, and you don't count the revenue. You have to budget, gross budget,
We
Kathy.
did gross budget, but we still get money back from those areas.
Okay. So,
What do you want to do?
Zach, do you want to make a proposal as far as you were saying? Go ahead.
My proposal would be that the chief find another, well, y'all can disagree with me. My proposal would be that the chief find another $15,000 amongst his various, I don't know, 4 different budget line items.
Did you say
That was
one?
at 15, 15 or 50?
5.
Thank you.
50?
15.
15, sorry, thank
So you're
you.
looking at something less than
$1,000.
3%.
Reducing his overall increase to from 75 to 60.
Okay. Is there a second? Oh, Neil, you're on mute. You weren't brave enough to take your cell phone.
Okay, I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion?
So Zach, why the 15? What did you base that off of?
So aggressively, I can identify. If I was being aggressive, I think that he could probably cut 33 to 35 without making a significant impact on the services that he offers. Obviously, that's some belt tightening, right? That's not giving back $50,000 at the end of the budget year. That's kind of sticking to the situation. Now, 15, that's less than the 30 that I identified, right? 15 feels like a more reasonable number, maybe. So that's where I came up with 15.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion?
So given, this may not be the right time, but given that we're asking Steve to come down by 15 and we'll be asking other departments, how do we guarantee to them and maybe we can't, that we're gonna, come this time next year, we're not gonna ask you to, you can't spend any more money. I guess that's not,
He will hit he'll hit a basement that he can't expend more money anyway.
Yep.
So and once that happens, he's SOL, because you can't overspend your budget, and it's a bottom line budget, and not unless Kathy can identify other departments that might have some flush money that they just can't work at a certain point. But arguably, 15,000 is probably not a real budget killer, even though I'm sure Steve doesn't appreciate that.
Nope.
What's that?
I mean, the reality is the town could vote our entire budget down and you would have to find $75,000 in your budget.
I think the taxpayers could add money to his budget if they want to. They decide that.
One thing we as a select board have to realize is the town manager and the finance director are the ones that have to say, oh, wow, we're short revenue. So, we're going to have to take a hit. So you guys aren't going to even get to spend a portion of what we gave you. And it's happened every year for the past 6 years. It always happens. And guys, it's something we're not involved in. It's been the town administrator and the finance director and the department heads that have sat down and done that the last quarter of every year. Sometimes it's been in December, in November.
Half year.
I've seen it, so that's all I'm saying.
Can I make a suggestion?
Okay. Sure.
I think our service departments have been really hit over the past few years from what I've noticed. I mean, we also get a lot of phone calls that we redirect to other departments. Wouldn't it be natural that, Kathy came to me and she saw an area where, hey, I noticed that you spent 9,000 out of the 12,000 at the end of the last fiscal year. Can we cut that by a few thousand? Shouldn't we be looking at departments that have more heavy, more administrative costs to cut as well?
I think that's exactly what I'm proposing, Josie.
Yeah, but each department, not just the police and fire department.
We haven't gotten to highways yet, though.
Yeah, they just got to the police, Josie. We haven't gotten very far.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
So is that a motion or?
No, there was a motion. There was a second.
Motion.
And we're having discussion.
We're in discussion.
And that might bring up well, never mind. If we take it department by department, that might get.
I think you're almost there.
Okay.
Yep.
In that case.
I just need a vote.
All right. So therefore, Neil, your vote.
Aye.
Mary Ann.
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
John.
Nay.
Bill. Aye. Nice to have it.
All right. So no further changes on the police department. If you look at page
5, 6.
six, you're looking at ambulance. There are some recommendations there from the town manager. The ambulance is up 7,600. With the recommendations from your town manager, they would be down by $8,075.
Okay.
One of those lines is what was another paramedic in that budget that we talked about. We currently have one on each shift. One on 2 shifts, 0 on the other 2 shifts. So we're trying to bring that up to a medic on every shift, which also increases revenue because we're able to bill them out at a higher rate when they go on an ALS call.
Tom, is that
Yeah,
under the fire
where's fire
department
department?
budget?
we're
We're
looking
on
at ambulance right
ambulance.
Yeah, it's under your fire
Yeah,
department.
we split it, it's split 50-50. So the $7,000 that came out of that line is training wages, half the training wages for a paramedic. It's also not okay that we have a standard of care that varies depending on the day that you happen to call 911. That's what we're trying to avoid.
So the overall between police and fire, the request from the department head is to be up by $7,640 for ambulance, $287,339 for the fire department.
Mhm.
Are any of the recommendations from the town manager something that you could agree with, Tom?
The three that I primarily disagree with the most, we've already spoken about, and that's the administrative increases, the new firefighter position, and the medic wages.
Tom, how are you doing on your training budget this year? Is it possible you could get that? Is it possible that your budget would allow you to get that person trained as a paramedic with your remaining this year funds rather than holding it off till next year?
That's a good question. The medic that we spoke about that's going to be getting certified this summer, most of his costs are in the FY21 budget. So he's still in school until this summer. And then we had another firefighter position to go to school this fall to get her paramedic. So she wouldn't even start till fall. And
gotcha.
But to answer your question, Ann, I the rest of it I don't like. That's not the budget we submitted. That's not the budget that the ABC went along with, but I get it. And I didn't have heartburn over the remainder of those changes that Kathy had proposed. And Kathy and I talked about this, by the way, too. We went through it last week.
Kathy, did you want to amend? Do you think you should amend your thing? Or?
Well, I mean, I told Tom if he feels that any of this is not, these are my recommendations. They're for the board to approve or disapprove. But you're the one that, can defend certain items if there's, reason. But we do need to tighten our belts and we need to be reasonable in what we're requesting. Because, we're not going to have a town left to come to if it gets so expensive, nobody can live here because nobody can pay the taxes. So it's just finding areas that you might be able to reduce. We looked at past, like what you spent in the past, and that's why some of these were recommended to maybe take them down to a certain amount.
I think we spoke about that firefighter position possibly being grant funded through the SAFER Act, which is 3 years at 100%, but that's not a guarantee.
Right, 3 years at 100%, and then it's ours. So
right.
And Tom, if you do get that grant, we can always hold a public hearing and increase the budget
to accept
those unanticipated funds, which would in fact increase your budget itself. So it's a little bit different way of looking at budgeting.
I thought we had the gross budget for that.
What
You're
you're
saying
gross budgeting for is a position, whether you get the grant or not.
Right.
So the first three lines of the fire department, all three of those lines will go down to the 0%. Those are non-union employees.
Yeah.
So do we, in the case of that position, is there a way to do that? Maybe that's what you just described, and I just need to hear it described again. Is there a way to do that so that Tom can still apply for the grant, and if he gets it?
He can apply for the grant, absolutely. But what he would have to do is make sure that if there was any percentage that his department has to contribute, if it is not 100%, as he's indicating, we need to make sure we can find that money in the budget. That would be the only concern with doing that.
Okay, but because it's 100%, we think that that's not an issue.
Well, he's saying here he needs this guy or gal, no matter whether that grant goes through or not, is what he's telling you. For the safety of that department and for the town is what he's saying. So that's a little bit different.
We talked about this last week. We should be, we don't even meet minimum staffing for a fire engine. We send it out with 2 people on it. And ideally we should be adding 1 per shift, which would be $300,000. And we thought this was a good starting place to have that one floater where we could put that person in where, during busy times.
What do you I mean, I don't know what our general feelings on this, but if you feel really strongly about that position, is this a situation where we should take it to the town? Put it on the warrant as a separate item?
You're asking me?
When will you hear about the grant?
That opens shortly. We have 30 days to file it. And they take sometimes 6 months to do.
And is that a salary only, Tom?
So 100%.
No, that's all costs.
Salary and benefits?
Yeah, I believe.
Uniform, that kind of crap? Probably.
He's asking whether or not uniforms and other equipment is also included?
I think so.
Okay.
For 3 years. That's the way we write the grant. All costs are included.
And if we don't get the grant, are we going to say no? So, I mean, that's the upshot. If we don't budget it and rely on the grant, then there won't be an opportunity to hire if we don't get the grant.
If you leave it in there and you do a warrant article for this extra person, say contingent upon approval of the townspeople.
Well, then we'll still wipe it out if we don't get the grant. But
Or contingent upon getting the grant.
So Tom, getting back to the request from Kathy, so the only item that you're really indicating to the board that you absolutely have to have is that additional person, is that correct?
Well, I have also identified the paramedic program as a critical need, and
so is that a training line?
There's 10 in training between the 2 budgets, 5 and 5, and there's 10 in wages.
Is that 10 to train 1 person, or is that 10 to train 2?
That's to train 1. We had planned on 1 per year.
Gotcha.
And that's not the full cost. That's a number that I thought we could contribute to get that person to that certification level. We also, I don't know if I talked about this before, but with the firefighter who's in the program now, he will has already signed a 3-year contract with us. So if he leaves within the next 3 years, he's liable for the money that we've spent to train him up.
So I don't know.
So out of the $294,979, that they're up. Is there an amount that the board would like them to find?
Town manager is proposing at 88,000.
88,350, yes.
That's the total on Kathy's proposal?
The total between your two budgets, Tom, for the increase is 294,900. Kathy is recommending a change, a reduction of 88,350.
Where is that 88,000 coming from?
Under the town manager's recommendations.
Yeah,
You look at the spreadsheet that was sent over, John, you'll see
Yeah,
that.
I didn't get everything when I moved my computer out here. I just took my other one. I'll have to go get those other papers.
Okay. Which would bring your increase, Tom, to 206,629 if we took out the 88,350.
Much of that, what she had proposed is that new position and the paramedic upgrades.
Yep.
That's the bulk of that money. And much of the remainder is, as we spoke, Blue Cross and the New Hampshire retirement system.
Yeah, almost
145,000 for those two items.
Yep. That one's pretty hard to avoid.
Yeah.
And that 140 there, it's probably averaged 75,000 a year over the last 6 years. So, I mean, it's not something that's going to go away next year. At one point, the town was putting in $250,000 a year for 5 years into the retirement program. Whoop. I lost again. Dadgummit. This thing, I'm Joan, call.
We can still hear you, John.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah.
I just can't see. I can't see anything. Okay.
We can see you, though.
Looks like you jacked your camera up towards the ceiling.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah.
No, I've got something. Anyways, yeah, I'll look at that 88. But I mean, if we go back and you can probably tell us, we probably averaged 60,000 a year over the past 4 years, increases in retirement and health insurance.
Minimum increases, John. That I think it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying. We're talking about somebody, dropping 80,000, and over the past 4 years, we've lost $500,000 in additional expenses, and it doesn't change. It doesn't even come close to not increasing every single year.
That's why increased headcount is one of the most devastating things we can do.
And that's like saying every year we got to cut an employee to accommodate the retirement and.
Okay. Well, so let's get some.
I got to find.
So I'm still kind of like a little perplexed, but we're not gonna, if we accept the manager's recommendations, reduce it by 88,000, and put the new employee under a grant that would be accepted. And realistically, if the grant's applied for and they deliberate for up to 6 months, we're targeting like July or August, where this person can probably be hired anyway. So the grant is not going to slow it down, correct?
Well, I mean, if it was in the budget, they would be on the job July 1. Is that what you're,
I know,
is that
but
what you're asking?
if it's not in the budget and the grant is one, then this isn't going to slow down the hiring process. It doesn't seem like. It'll be like July, by the time you get word back that the grant's approved and if it is approved?
It opens mid-January. It's got to be turned in mid-February. So it
Set up
it
the
wouldn't
6th.
hold it up by much. It could be August or September.
Okay, 6 on 2 is 8, so,
But if we knew it was coming, we would, we would start the process.
right.
If we knew the money was coming, right?
Yep.
So is that
Start awarded.
preferable? Is that what the board is thinking of doing? We have not been making motions on these corrections. So is that the general consensus of the board to accept what the manager has?
Yeah. So if this is something that Tom feels very strongly about, should we consider a warrant article for this particular position?
I would say that would be a good idea.
Well, what if they turn it down?
Well, he still gets to go seek the grant.
Yeah, then it's back to that.
No, if they turn it down, no means no. It means he can't even go for the grant this year.
Why would that be the case?
No means no. So if you put a warrant article in to hire a full-time administrative fire guy and your town meeting says no, no means no until the next year.
Yeah, but that would be no in terms of funding it.
No means no, Zach.
Actually, that kind of
But
makes,
it's all about how you write it. I mean, this is legal language. I don't accept no means no in this particular scenario.
Oh, you need to. Yeah, no means no. Just like if you put Bartlett out, if they say no at town
Yeah, but
meeting.
Bartlett's a different story. We're literally asking them, and if they say no, we're not going to do it.
That's what a warrant article does. You're asking.
No, if the warrant article says the town will raise and appropriate $80,000 for a position, and the town says no, we won't raise that, and we go raise that money in an alternative fashion, that
no means no, Zach.
no, and actually that would be kind of bad for the fact that
Yeah.
3 years from now, we're gonna be paying for it anyway, and we just backdoored this process on the townspeople. So,
well, then we should put it on the warrant article either way, because I don't want to be associated with backdooring a position into the town having to pay for it in 3 years.
No, you'd have to be upfront about obviously what the program is. It's 3 years at 100%, and then you own it.
And you will, all 5 of you as selectmen should be able to make a decision on this. Do you want it in the budget? Do you not want it? That's why people put you in office.
I mean, from my perspective, I don't want to pay for this position in
Okay.
2021, but I do see that the chief has a need, and if we can pay for it through grant funding and get ourselves 3 years to roll into the position, I fully endorse that. Those are not contrary perspectives.
Right. So encourage him to go for a grant, take it out of the budget at this time.
I agree.
But then we're backdooring it on the town. I think if you can't have it both ways with what you're stating to us.
No, I'm not saying, I'm saying take it out of the budget 100%. Then I'm saying you don't need to go to town with it. What you're telling Tommy is to go get your grant. If you get your grant, we'll add it to the budget.
And how does that happen, Ann? Do we have to have a special town meeting or a
No, we
public
just have a
hearing?
public hearing.
So then how does it work come 3 years and we have to pay for that position? How does
At
that
that
work?
point, you would put it in the budget, or you would tell Tommy that you don't have that position anymore. Or you could put it before the people at that point.
Okay.
and also too, just keep in the back of your mind, I mean, it's always nice to think about, but theoretically, revenue is gonna be picking up in like 3 years.
You keep saying that.
I haven't heard that we
I've
have.
been saying it for a decade, yeah.
But
So, anyway, I kind of support that, but,
Yeah.
that's, I see head nods and, pretty much yes. John, you're off to the side there. Nope. Anyway, I kind of like that too. So we
We
got,
need a motion to accept the administrator's recommendations here.
We haven't been, well, sure.
Second it.
The manager, town manager's recommendation.
Sorry.
Is there a motion to accept the town
Zach
manager?
made a motion.
Oh, I didn't really quite hear that.
I
Zach
seconded
moved.
it.
That way, but yes, so moved.
So was there a second or
Yeah.
Neil seconded
Neil,
it.
you seconded it. Any discussion?
So wait, hold on.
Zach moved
Okay, I got that. And then Neil
Neil
seconded.
seconded.
What recommendation are you voting on?
to take,
Reduce
strike it from the
the town
budget,
manager's-
accept the town manager's recommendation.
So to reduce his overall budget by
88,350.
plus the 8175 for the ambulance?
Oh, 8175 for the training? What?
Aren't
For,
those rolled up together? They're not, are they?
They're not.
Oh, that was just fire, Ann, what you had quoted, 88?
That was just fire. Is that right, Kathy? Okay. There's another 8,175
Oh, right.
in ambulance.
Ambulance.
that was the training, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
majority of it was
The
training.
majority of it.
Okay.
I'm only moving on the 88,350.
Okay. Neil, are you still seconding that?
Second.
Okay, Mary Ann, your vote.
I,
Neil,
Aye.
Zach, John,
Aye.
Bill, aye.
Okay, so we're leaving the ambulance alone.
Yep.
Okay.
why are we leaving ambulance alone?
Not certain, but
Unless
I
you
didn't
want,
move it.
excuse me.
Oh, go ahead, Zach.
I said only because I didn't move it, but
that's right.
If we leave it, that would secure that we'd be able to still move forward with that paramedic program and help as much as we can for that individual.
Okay, I think we slid by that one, so, okay.
And honestly, the revenue from being able to bill out at a higher rate is more than gonna cover that.
Makes sense.
Like we're moving on.
Okey-doke.
The next one changes highway department. The overall increase is 71,878. The town manager is recommending $7,000 increase. Decrease, sorry.
Yeah.
See those changes?
Yeah. Yeah, so. Equipment,
Small parts,
small parts,
and uniforms.
uniforms.
However,
So we
Joe
did-
has recommended an increase to the engineering line.
Yes, he asked to add $4,000 to the engineering line, making it 24,000. However, and he asked to put, I had recommended taking 6,000 from the equipment, small parts, and leaving it at 20. So Joe has agreed to lower his road construction, which is at the bottom of the page. It was at 60, he was asking for 80. He has agreed to lower that by 10 to 20,000. So he's willing to leave it at the 60 so that he can have the additional engineering and so he can put 6,000 back into the small parts.
So just so you know, like my small parts, I have 6 months to go and I've already spent that line item.
Not
So if you take
not
another
according to the-
2,000 off that line item,
Joe, is that anticipated? Because the budget that I'm looking at, you haven't spent it all. I show you have a $9,390 balance in that budget.
I know what I have and I'm telling you that that's spent right now. I've got the bills, they're coming in.
Zach, you're looking at a budget that was expended through last week. If he ordered anything or has additional bills coming in, they would not be in that budget.
Okay, so that 9,000 has been expended and we probably have some purchase orders to pay?
That's what he's saying. Yeah.
Have we approved them?
So I don't even have a way to get through the next 6 months, let alone if you decide to take another 2,000 off for next year. So I don't know how that works for you, but and that's the thing, you know, you keep asking us to make cuts, and I just don't have any place to go anymore. Everything that I do has a consequence.
On the
Equipment or roads or.
On the engineering line item, again, I've got a week-old budget, but I show that you haven't expended any of that yet. Is if that's still true, is it possible for you to spend some of what you were hoping for next year out of this year's budget? Or do you have a bunch of engineering planned for the remainder of this year?
No, my engineering budget, I've already appropriated that on the approval that, on the notion that that money's to be spent to engineer Emerson Street. So the money I put in.
So that 20,000 is going to be, that 20,000 in your current fiscal year, you're using that for Emerson Street.
That is going to be spent.
Okay.
So Kathy, with the changes that you've recommended. So
We're adding it's adding four to the 20 for engineering and making it 24.
Okay.
I recommended deducting 6,000 from his small parts, but he's asked that we put that back in because he needs that. So leaving that at 26, but then going down to the road construction and either taking 10 to 20,000 off of that. We can leave it at 70 or we can bring it back down to 60. That will help him with his engineering.
What does that, what would that be thrown at? Part of the estimates that you're already making on the different.
But the road construction part of it?
Yep, because 60K.
So that's like paving or any of the.
that's no project. That's
right.
Small projects.
This is just general about town stuff.
So it's a no-win, but I have to tell you, if I don't have the money to repair stuff, then we park it, and then. So either way, I don't win. So if you do less road construction and I keep my equipment running.
I understand. What say you?
Joe's got to be able to get his small parts. He's got to keep the equipment going.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the road construction line, he had 60,000 for this fiscal year. He's asking for 80 for the next fiscal year. And he's willing to deduct 10 to 20,000 from that 80. So do you want him to keep 70,000 in there? Or do you want him to take it back to the 60?
$70.
I think we got to get caught up on our roads.
Yeah, I'll go with 70.
So you're asking him to find 10,000
Yep.
No, we found
his
it.
budget. No, he needs to find that, Kathy. As department heads, you've allowed everybody else
We already did that.
to find
By
how
lowering
much they wanted.
By lowering his road construction, $10,000. We've already got that. We're lowering the road
Sure,
construction.
but from a procedural standpoint, I think that's fine that we go with we suggest a $10,000 reduction and then let Joe decide that's going to come out of road construction.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And mean, if he wants to take 1,000 out of it, out of uniforms, like you've suggested, he can do that too.
Right.
As long as I can keep my equipment repairs. And if I do less road construction, then that's where I'm at with it.
You want a motion on that, Ann?
I guess we do.
So I move that we reduce the highway by 10,000.
I'll second.
All right, Zach moves, Mary Ann seconds. Neil, your vote.
Aye.
Hello, any discussion?
I said aye.
Okay. Zach,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bill? Aye. Thank you, Jeff. Yep.
Right.
No. Capital.
All right, so it looks like, just so the board knows, the airport, when you look at that over expenditure of 8,000 on there, you see the highlighted expenditure over expend. We received a significant grant, so we really didn't overspend that budget. So just so you know that, okay?
Is that for the master plan?
I don't remember which one it was.
No,
Sorry.
master plan was like 3 years ago or something like that.
So then you're on to recycling. Again, the recycling budget received 2 insurance payments due to major repairs.
Okay.
Right now, that budget's up 35,516.
Jesse still on?
I'm still on.
Jesse, yep.
Okay. Well, if you weren't, I was gonna knock out 35,000.
Or none.
No, I was not.
The budget committee recommended that we reduce this by 29,000 by eliminating that work, not converting that part-time to full-time.
Correct.
Personally, I'm in favor of that, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Any other comments on that?
I was just listening to the budget committee was how to justify it based on the figures or what figures he had.
Oh, we kind of tend to agree, actually, especially for this year. But so in that case, is there a motion to accept the budget committee's recommendation, not making that a permanent position, full-time position? That was kind of is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Zach moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Ooh, 2 seconds.
John can have it.
John won, yeah. Any discussion? Seeing
What's the
none.
motion?
Oh, go ahead.
To accept the budget committee's recommendation to not convert that part-time position to a full-time position for the recycling center,
Okay.
which is effectively a $29,000 savings.
All right.
So I do have a comment about it. I feel like the budget committee does not understand what I do. They get to look at paper in which I provided, and it did show an increase. So I'm doing more work with the same amount of people that I had 3 years ago.
Well, at least at this point, you're fortunate that you're fully staffed, and theoretically, you're not going to be drawn back into injecting vaccine. So, hopefully, you'll be around as well.
So that's not for certain.
Okay. And just accept this as, well, Jesse, first of all, you will be getting some additional help from like Ann or whatever to at least make your descriptions clear if they're lacking anything. And have a better argument for making it a full-time position. And it's not that this is going to be like your savior, but I'd almost be tempted to look into a regional acceptance of trash, because some of these towns were increasing their revenue pretty significantly, and I think more people want to get out of trash collection. I don't know if it's going to really kind of like increase our bottom line as far as revenue, but it'll definitely increase your tonnage.
It will significantly increase the tonnage for the town.
So, you'd be getting at least another full-time position, maybe more. But I don't know who you'd contact, but it seems like people are doing that, or at least towns are doing that. And I think we're well placed to do it ourselves. But
do you know which towns are doing that?
Yeah, I think it was Littleton, but I'll research it. I'll send it off to you because I don't know. It was some show. It could have been a news item. Maybe it was a Channel 9, but I'll send it to you. But in any event, I think you're gonna probably like bite the bullet on this one, and hopefully by next year maybe we can revisit it. But so in any event, we had who moved it? Zach.
Zach.
Yep.
John
And
seconded.
okay, John seconded it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, John, your vote.
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Bill, aye.
So the next set of recommendations from the town manager were, you already voted on those today.
Nonprofits.
Nonprofits, yep. And then you go into Park and Rec. Currently, their budget is up 32,616.
Larry's no longer here. But
Yeah, he's
Right.
still
Yeah,
left. I do know that they are having some staff changeovers. We've had a couple people who have or will soon retire.
yeah, Jim.
Is
There.
there anything today, Kathy, that he mentioned that might help his budget at all? No,
Not just the retirement of Jim and Morris,
Morris left, yep.
placing them. I think he's moving up some of the people that work for him into those positions, but it will still be at a lower salary. So he will have some savings to give us once he does that.
So some of these will be reduced by the 0% thing.
They will be, yes. Yep. Yep. Actually, probably most of the budget lines for salaries will be down.
Yeah, although I mean the bulk of this increase comes from retirement and
Wage and benefits, yep.
Yep. So we're leaving alone it, or
Yeah, there's nothing, Larry's, like I said, Larry will give us the new salaries of the two people that he's bringing up.
yeah.
So that will lower that line a little bit.
Oh, geez, Diane's still on. I guess we can't whack that one. but-
Diane, you come back in just in time.
All right, Memorial Day. We can do away with that.
So the library budget is up 24,515. Diane, the board is recommending a 0% increase for all non-union employees. There was also some discussion from the budget committee that they wanted to remove the propane for the gas fireplace and possibly remove the overtime.
I do have to speak about that because with the new MRI recommendations. We do have a couple of folks that need to move up in order to achieve a baseline hourly rate. So I really would like to keep that $3,000 in order to be able to move them up to meet their bottom line criteria for that purpose. As I said in my initial argument about that, we do generally use that money in our just regular budget. We usually end up plugging it in for other needs, and this is definitely going to be fulfilling a need.
Okay.
Paying people actually what they're deemed worthy of making as a bottom baseline amount, which is great. I mean, I'm happy to do it, but needing the money to do it is also something else, which would be, it would be handy to have that money to do that. I have to say I'm in favor of the pay plan. I think it'll be great to have a structure and a way forward and a very organized plan to look ahead to. So I'm very much in favor of developing this plan. But I definitely would like to have that $3,000 in order to help us establish the baseline to do that. Whether or not we get to keep our fireplace going. Which is really lovely. You should come see it.
Are you also sympathetic with the fact that non-union employees are going to be doing a 3%, non-increase, or?
If I say no, will you do something about it?
I'll talk to your trustees. No, I would not do anything about it.
Well, there you go.
Diane, I noticed that your subscriptions line item is
Yes.
one that in 2019 was overexpended, and then again this year, looking at my 1 week old budget report, is again overexpended.
Yes.
You have put in a light increase there, but I still don't think it puts you back in the black.
Right. So we had started noticing some magazines are just going out of business completely. And one of the things that we had noticed is that online subscriptions are kind of taking off. And so they're, of course, much more expensive because they allow for simultaneous use, which allows publishers to jack the price up. So we've made some investments there. We also have a really nice donor base, which allows us to pay for some of them. But especially with the onset of COVID, we've invested in Newsbank, and we've made another investment in Ancestry, which has taken off like wildfire, and some other online subscription services as sort of a test run to see if people would use them. One of them, we've decided not to get the print version of World Book Encyclopedias, the one that has the picture across, and because people just weren't using them in-house, but online, it seems like people are kind of taking to it again. So we've made some investments that way, but they're more expensive than the print version, generally speaking. So that has kind of accounted for the overspend that way. You can spend money for a print version, but if people don't use it, it's not a good investment. But if people are using it online, especially during this COVID time, then it's a better investment for us and serves the community better.
All right. Any other comments?
After you've done that for a year, in the budget cycle next year, it might make sense to shift because your point resonates. I look at your books line item, it's down, right? So what you're saying is totally makes sense. You might want to just shuffle the books to subscriptions or something just to get it to not make someone go, what's going on here? But
see what's working, see what isn't. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
think your next round of changes appear to be coming from your capital. Land,
We didn't have a comment on this before we get to capital and debt services. Care of trees went from 2,000 to 7,000. We added 5,000 there.
Yep. I made that recommendation because ultimately everybody comes to me to make that happen. The trees come down and we overspend that line item every year. And then it was coming out of my budget. And then, so I was asked to just keep it in that line item. And so we're already over by almost $1,000 now.
Mhm.
And I threw us, I thought $5,000 was a small number compared to the amount of trees that the calls and the requests to have trees come down and the safety. It really needs to come up. No one ever addresses it until after the fact. And then it comes back onto my department. So this year I addressed it and I was being conservative. So in my world, this is a conservative number.
Does this is this just a number that gets you to a point where you have enough funds to deal with problems when they arise, or is this enough that it actually gives you some space to be proactive in areas where things have grown up and might be starting to cause hazards?
So I get an average of 15 to 20 calls a year for trees, on top of the ones that blow down or on top of the trees that we observe or deal with. And so on an average, a tree is $1,000 to $1,200 a tree to come down.
Mhm.
So you're only talking 5 or 6 trees here
Yes,
versus
you're not even close.
versus the amount of calls. So that's why I say I'm being conservative. I need to bring this up slowly. So I know that's a large number, but this is long overdue.
Yep, I think those numbers support that. Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
so your capital land and improvements, this is where Bartlett Road's warrant article will go. So you'll see when we go to have our public hearing, you're gonna see 125,000 in that line somewhere.
Additional, yeah.
Yeah, additional.
And the rest of these are just payments we have to make.
Yep, capital land and improvement, I'm looking at. When you say payments that need to be made, that's in debt service, right, Zach?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm looking at debt service.
Okay.
My mistake.
Yeah, those are payments that need to be made.
And the primary increase there is because of the new bond payment?
Yes.
So no surprises.
So when we talk about the capital land and improvements, at one point, we had a conversation with Joe with potentially the 250,000 that he's asking for and the improved road construction. He did make a proposal to the board. Joe, do you have that with you?
No, but it's basically I went from 250,000 down to 200,000.
202. 202, yep.
And then the other 50, what you were asking me to do is cut that budget so we can find money to put in capital for the equipment, for the grader. So basically I'm cutting that line item and I'm putting almost 50,000 in towards capital reserve for the grader. So once again, I'm doing a smaller amount of road construction so I can offset to try to put money towards a grader.
Okay.
So then we look at capital vehicle, machinery and equipment. Ambulance, let's see,
Defibs.
equipment, defibrillators. Tom, are you still on?
What page you on?
On
I am.
13.
13, yeah.
So that defibrillator, and I believe, I don't have the CIP in front of me, but you had authorized us to go ahead and buy that. We put down 5,000 and we still owe 18. Is that the line?
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't an additional defibrillator. So that's just
No.
paying off the rest of that.
So we need to
Exactly.
take that
So
off.
we need that back in there unless we have money at the end of this year to pay for it.
That's what we had talked about too, at the end of June or whatever, if we have funds left over.
Got it.
You might be able to pay it off in this fiscal year.
The other recommendation from the town manager is the equipment repairs. It's been 20,000 consistently across. This year, the request was for 30. Recommending that go down to 20.
Joe?
I'm
I'll take it.
I'm speechless.
Speechless.
It said we spent 36.5.
Well, we did, but we also had a grant. When we first started this, you had a $15,000 grant. And then it's kind of grown over the years into being a regular line item. And this was the first year that it's been asked to go from 20 to 30.
Well, my reasoning is because somehow I'm trying to put money up for a grader. I just can't keep putting it off, so that's why I'm trying to raise the ante, but unsuccessful. But that's how it goes.
Go for a season. What is it? What do we rent a grader for? And how
So
long?
my grader was broke down over 2 months this summer, and I spent the last 2 years on the grader, I have spent $18,000 in repairs.
What did we spend for
When I was
rental?
broke down, and I was broke down for over 2 months. And if I wanted to rent a grader, it was $10,000 a month to rent a grader. And that's not including transportation, which is another $600 each way.
Did we rent one this year?
I did not. I did not, and I had a lot of negative feedback, and this is why I'm struggling, because I don't want the town to be in that situation again, but here I am.
Is there a possibility for a couple of towns to go in on a grader, or?
I wouldn't want the burden of sharing a grader, because then you got to figure out how to share the repair costs. And then have an experienced operator and then transporting it from town to town, who carries that liability insurance wise, traveling down the road. And
Well,
I've contemplating the idea. So my only reasoning is looking at newer graders, not new. A new grader is over 300,000, and we were just approached with a price for a 2015 grader, comparable to what we have for 200,000. And they were only going to give us 15,000 for our grader.
Yeah.
So our grader is not worth much, and we're spending more on repairs than the machines.
Well, right. Well, this is what I'm saying. If we spend 18,000 on repair and we're looking at about 11,000 a month, if we rent it for 2 months, that's 22,000, which is about what we spend in repairs. And, you know.
So you pick 2 months, you got to be able to pick the 2 months, and then if you don't get it right, or you have a rain event or something, so you have a grader for 2 months. I don't know. That's a wing and a prayer to say that the other months that you won't need it.
Well, kind of what I'm getting at is, even if you did it for 3 months over a 10-year period, you'd be spending 300,000, but you wouldn't have any repairs. So I don't know. How long does a grader last?
Well, this is a 1988, and it's well overdue, and this is why I have a capital reserve to put money away, which I'm unsuccessful at.
Yeah. All right.
Unfortunately, putting $10,000 away, it's not going to get us to a grader very quick.
Right. But you're trying to put 30 away, right?
This isn't money going into capital reserve. This is money to be spent on this
Okay.
line here. So the recommendation is to reduce that to 20,000.
Yeah.
This is
Nope.
This is repairs.
This is repairs. From the request of 30 down to 20 is the town manager's recommendation.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
John moves. Zach seconds. Neil, your vote.
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bill? Aye.
We're almost there, guys. And the last is the transfers to capital reserve. Out of the, oh boy, $323,416 additional that was asked for. I'm sorry, out of the 609,705 that was asked for, a recommendation from the town manager is only,
Well, it'd be 158 at this point.
yeah, looks like 158,000 out of the 609,705. I think the thought process behind this was that we've had two very large bonds over the last few years that we've tried very hard to spread around so that people can at least get their head above water. And until some of those payments are made down, that maybe we just don't put any more money into a savings account until we can get some of those bills paid off. Kathy, is that?
Our first bond, that was 2016, I believe, we have like less than half or just about half left to pay on that. And in looking at the life expectancy of equipment and road maintenance, things that need to be done, by the time that's paid off and we need some of this other equipment, we should be able to apply for another bond at hopefully the same low interest rate, which would keep the taxes down. Because when we put stuff like, this amount of money into a savings account, the tax rate goes up by quite a bit usually. So the bond helps us. Like, I know this past year, I think that with what was requested, it was going to be a $3 increase on the tax rate, but with the bond, it was like 69 cents. So it just, to me, it makes sense. If you don't have money to put in savings, you don't put money in savings, but we're also paying down our previous bonds, which will give us a chance to apply for another bond and get more of the infrastructure and equipment that we need. And I'm looking at like a 10-year bond because, life expectancy on those things is like 15 years or plus. Like Joe said, one piece of equipment is a 1988, I believe. But we could be able to get back on track that way so that we can take care of our needs, our infrastructure needs, and our equipment needs.
And I've been able to utilize, we got a brand new loader and a 1-ton that we haven't got yet, but we should have it within another month. And we got a new wood chipper. So there are some pluses, and I know there's a lot of negative on my part, but I am appreciative of what comes my way. So yeah, we're very appreciative of what has come our way so far.
Well, we appreciate you being somewhat patient.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. At least 14 years worth of patient, I think.
Yeah.
So it's time to take care of the town.
True.
And I'm saying, to not put, if you don't have money to put in savings, you don't put money in savings. The only thing that I'm asking to put into capital reserves is the Conservation Commission's request for 5,000, the library's request for 5,000, the 48,000 that Joe asked you to take from his road construction to put towards the grader, and then the 100,000 that we're going to need for Main Street and possibly Highland Street.
What's the deal with the Conservation Commission? That was.
It's Conservation Commission puts 5,000 in capital reserves every year to save towards.
Yeah. Okay. They're
a piece of
yep.
property.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Do you need a motion for that?
For my recommendations?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I move that we adopt Kathy's recommendation.
Second.
All right. Neil moves. John seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none.
I don't know how we ever get to a point, but I do think that the being behind and paying for bonds is less desirable than getting ahead and putting money in savings and being able to spend our money instead of having to spend finance money.
Yeah.
I think I can get behind it this year because everything else, but I think the pattern of getting credit to buy things I don't think that's a healthy pattern.
It's.
I would agree that the rates though are so attractive. Like, yeah. Lakes Region Mental Health Center, they got like a 30-year fixed loan for like, I don't know, 1.5 million for, it was something like 2%. You know, it's pretty amazing.
Well, this 2.5 million was at 1.75, Zach.
It was very low.
Pretty soon they'll be paying us to take money
Yeah.
from them.
Right.
As long as you have good management to pay it back.
Yeah,
Right.
true. All right. So any further discussion? Seeing none, Mary Ann, your vote?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Neil?
Aye.
Bill? Aye.
So out of all the changes taken into consideration in the budget, it appears that from its original proposal that you're down 652,000, which is about $1.50, $1.25, Kathy. That's total bottom line. Maybe a little bit more. 652 is what you took out of the budget today.
We can go do our updates.
Yep, tomorrow.
Is there anything else?
Chairman, if I may,
Sure, go ahead.
I think it would be important at the start of the public hearing, and I think usually you do, to let people know where we started with this process and where we ended up before we even took it to the public. I think that would be helpful for all of us.
True.
Yeah, I mean, our departments already gave up once, and this is the second time. Plus our raises and.
Yep, it's pretty dismal.
But I think, I think we can share that with those that are there, just to let them know what has happened and the sacrifices, even with increases, the sacrifices the employees have made, and that the select board has looked at it, and the department heads have done more than their fair share.
Well, this is a watershed moment in our history. People may not realize it now, but we are in really, really tough times.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, we're going to be floating in revenues 2 to 3 years from now.
Yeah. We're going to hold you to that.
Go for it. I'll be off the board. And at least we'll get stimulus funds. I'm kind of have great hopes that we're going to be rolling in dough.
Are those through grants or is this canned over?
I think it's going to, well, it depends. Let's say if it goes to Gopher, it's going to be messed around by the state.
Oh, yeah.
If it could be obligated to, in fact, it's probably going to go through Gopher, actually. Just to do a funding mechanism, how to pay for population or whatever. Anyway, we'll still be getting some good revenue, I think. So.
You want to
right.
move to adjourn?
Yep. Neil moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Aye. Everybody.
Wow.
Discussion.
Next second. Oh, John, you vote. Neil?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.